Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Estrada, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, Lights Out Podcast people. We have another special guest, deep dive. I'm really excited about this. This is a guy who I used to love watching. We were on a lot of the same cards, and I like that because sometimes I'm like, I want the fight tonight. This dude better back off because it happens sometimes. You know what I mean? So it was always a competition who could get that stuff.
I think we were neck and neck on the race for a while.
So what we got here, 50 Fight Club member guy from up in Canada, Sam Stout. Sam, how you doing, brother? Long time no see.
I'm good. Sorry, my dog's just interrupting here. He likes to.
What kind of dog you got?
I'll grab him for you.
He's jealous. The dog's. Sam, that dog is jealous because you're rich and famous.
I got an English Bull Terrier.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a badass dog. When he calms down, I'll pick him up and put him on the camera.
There you go. Hey, I'm gonna pick up Murphy when he comes down and try and pick Murphy. It ain't gonna work. Murphy weighs about 80 pounds. Murphy's a Doberman. He's about 80 pounds right now. He's only like 9 months old, 10 months old, so he's gonna be big.
Nice.
My guy just turned a year.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
There he is. There he is.
There. Oh, that's a good-looking dog, man.
Yeah, look at that guy.
Oh, he's a fighter.
His mom puts the bandanas on him.
Hey, man, you did that. Don't try and hide behind her. You put clothes on him.
Here. This is my boy right here.
I love it. That's good.
All good, man. So
let's give it another restart, Chris. Let's do one more restart.
You think so?
No, I like that. But
I liked it, but we'll do it again. You can pick whatever you want. All right, what's happening, everybody? Oh,
maybe we should take the stick out of Mike's ass.
Yeah. It happens.
I'm just kidding, Mike.
Come on, this shit's real. This is real.
So is he just freaking out or?
He's just a puppy, man. It's like they're high strung breed. Oh, my wife's calling him upstairs, maybe. Hey, can you close that door, babe?
Let's just give it another start and go right through, Chris. That way it's smooth.
All right. Okay. Welcome back, Lights Out Podcast fan members. Here comes Murphy, by the way. Anyway, welcome back. Here with a special guest. Very excited about this deep dive because this is one of the guys who I used to get to, share not the octagon with, but the same time, the same fights, the same nights. And I think the dude took a couple bonuses from me, so I'm over that. It bothered me for a while, but we're cool now. It'll be all right. I'm from Canada, 50 Fight Club member. Sam, what's happening? Sam Stout, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. As good as can be expected with all this. I'm in Canada right now. This COVID thing's a mess, but other than that, things are good.
I mean, do you know anybody who lived through it, or is it gonna is everybody there is it like a zombie movie? Is it just the streets are empty?
They got everything locked down. It's like, it's ridiculous, but I mean, you're starting to see so much people are getting so fed up that people are just starting to go back out now. So at least things are starting to feel like they're going back to normal, but the government's still saying my gym's been closed I think something like 150 days in the last year. It's crazy. And if you go to Toronto, bigger city, more dense population, higher numbers, they've gyms there have been closed over 400 days since this whole COVID thing. Wow. So it's it's crazy. It's crazy. Luckily, so I got my gym going with Hominick now. That's what I'm doing to kind of pass the days. So me, Mark Hominick, and Chris Horodecki he's still part of it, but he's kind of working a day job on the side, so we don't see him as much. But we bought the building. I took kind of what money I had left from my fighting days, and Mark did the same, and Chris did the same, and we bought a piece of commercial real estate. So we own the building. So, and the government is the one thing I will say for them is they're giving us a lot of subsidies and stuff like that. So we're staying afloat. But let's talk about something interesting.
Yeah.
Well, hey, were you ever with Horodecki on any of his trips down to Costa Rica?
No, man. I stayed away from that. That guy's a wild man.
Okay. Yeah, that was us booking. That was us booking him. So we got questions.
Yeah. So you got some stories about him, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he pass out in a bar? because that's kind of his usual move.
Yeah,
That is MO.
Yeah, it's up
It
there.
was like, yeah, it'd be like Weekend at Bernie's. We'd just put a pair of sunglasses on him, and like somebody from the bar would just grab his arm and move it, make him look like he was still awake. But yeah, that was his go-to move, falling asleep in bars.
So Sam, the first time I actually saw you fight was June 7th, 2003.
Jeez.
Did you fight prior to Jay Estrada? Was that your first actual MMA fight?
That's my very first MMA fight. Yeah.
Really?
That
So
was
you guys
Chicago.
drove all the way from Canada.
In Chicago there, right?
Came down to Chicago.
Yeah.
Could you guys not find anything in Canada in terms of fights at that time?
I mean, I'm from Ontario, and MMA didn't even become legal until UFC 129. Sorry, the one where Hominick fought Aldo and GSP fought Shields. That was the first legal UFC event. I think there might have been one small MMA organization that snuck in before the UFC, after they legalized it, before the UFC got there. But it wasn't legal until what? That was 10 years ago now. So Back in those days, we were going to Montreal a lot. We were going all over the Midwest. We were we were just road warriors.
So how long of a drive was that for you?
To Chicago?
Yeah.
It's about 8 hours.
Yes, you made that trip.
You got to go around the lake, so it's a bit of a mission. Yeah.
Wow. So what do you recall about that event? I was actually a judge at that fight.
I remember. So I had a lot of amateur kickboxing experience. I don't know if I had fought pro yet or not in kickboxing, but I had a lot of fights, and they put these MMA gloves on me, and I'd been doing a little bit of training with Hominick because he had already started fighting some TKO events and some he fought, I'm trying, this is so long ago, it's hard to remember the exact timelines, but Hominick was already fighting. So I first made the move from kickboxing over to MMA just to be his training partner. So I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. So I was basically a kickboxer that they put a pair of MMA gloves on, and I was like, if I hit somebody with these, I'm going to kill him. So I went out, trying to take his head off with one punch, making, rookie mistake, fighting a, wrestler from the Midwest. He shot in, took me down. I managed to get back to my feet, and then didn't learn my lesson the first time, tried to take his head off with one punch again. And then he got my back and caught the rear naked choke. So that was learning experience for me.
So Team Tompkins is there, and they had a couple guys on the card. But that fight in particular, it seemed to kind of like stick with your team. Like you guys sent a few of your teammates at him, prior to your rematch with him later on.
Yeah.
Was that always something that you wanted? Like, was that fight always something that you wanted to get back?
Well, I mean, for a long time, it was my only loss on my MMA record. I took that loss. I took a draw to a guy named Joey Clark out in Minnesota. It was in Minnesota, which was bullshit draw. That was the hometown. He got lucky with the hometown judges. And then I went on and kept winning until I made it to the UFC. So that one kind of always stuck with me a little bit. So I did want it back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was interesting. We're going to get to it later on in the interview, but there was a couple moves going on with Team Tompkins who, like, when I saw you at this first fight, and then after you kind of you were still developing when you hit the UFC, and your maturity level, like you saw it just continue, rising. It was kind of fun to watch. All right. So your second fight, that was actually Joey Clark. So all your fights are actually on your record then. Is that correct? Your MMA fights? All right. So Joey Clark, he ended his career at 18-4. And he was actually on the Olympic ladder for wrestling.
1-1.
Right. I apologize.
Should have been 18.
No, that's good, Sam. That's good stuff.
That's I stand corrected. So, like, in terms of like ticket sellers in the Midwest, we always kind of like bring up names. Joey Clark was one of the biggest ticket sellers I've ever ran to.
Oh yeah, I remember being there, and everyone was like, the whole crowd was there for him. For sure. Yeah.
So you went into his hometown. Walk us through that fight, because I've been looking for that fight on video and I haven't been able to find it.
Oh, I think that I don't even know if anyone had a camera going on that for that one, but it was, it was your typical striker versus grappler match. He was a pretty decorated wrestler, your All-American boy came out in his Stars and Stripes tracksuit and all that. And, you know, great guy. And he hit me up not too long ago on social media or something. And I ran into him at an event too. That's besides the point though. But your typical striker versus grappler match, I had already lost one of those to Estrada. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. I was a little more prepared for it. You know, take down, took me down, get back up, land a bunch of combinations. It was the typical story of pretty much my whole fight career, right? Somebody trying to take me down, me trying to defend takedowns or get back up and land some leather.
And you got hometown on that decision, huh?
Well, I didn't lose. They called it a draw, which I won that. I think I won that fight.
Well,
you know,
if you're in somebody's backyard and you get a draw, you won.
Yeah.
I mean,
right?
That's common knowledge, I think.
It goes with it.
I even say if you got a split decision, you probably won on that.
Yeah. So one of the rare draws in an MMA fight. You don't see them that often, right?
Was it 2 rounds or 3?
It was a 3-rounder.
Yeah, that's very difficult to pull off.
Yeah. Right?
Oh, that's interesting. All right, so you started running the
Hey, it was I remember thinking at least it's not a loss. At least I'm not going 0-2 at the start of my pro career. But that was the last.
Go
ahead, Chris.
No, I was just saying. So how at this point you're 0-1-1, and you got a good team around you. I mean, do you have any sense of urgency? How you feeling? Because man,
Dude,
I know you want to get that monkey off your back.
I was 19 years old. You guys got to understand. I wasn't one of those guys who saw the first UFC and was like, "This is what I want to do. This is what." I started fighting because my sister met Shawn Tompkins and they started dating. And then Shawn kind of was like, he was like my hero when I was a kid. So I started fighting just to hang out with Shawn, and it was what it was. So I was never too emotionally invested. I never took it too seriously until it became a career and it was to pay the bills and and all that. Like it was, you remember what it was like in those days. You were fighting for peanuts. You had to love it you had to love it. There had to be something more in it for you than just money and just having the perfect record. And, I just like to fight. I like to go, I liked the lifestyle. I liked partying after. I liked training. I liked hanging out with the boys. I liked, I liked all that. It wasn't, it wasn't about the money until everyone else started getting rich and the fighters were still staying broke. That's when the money thing starts pissing you off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, so let me ask you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, your first 2 fights, that's good experience. You're on the road, 2 decent guys and stuff like
studs.
That. So yeah, I mean, that's at the end of the day, now you look back at it, compare that to what did Hominick do in his first fights when you were on the road with him? Did you take him to other fights? Was it more ghetto than that, or was he up against tough guys too?
He was against some very tough guys. He started off like he was undefeated kickboxing. Mark was always kind of the golden boy on our team, right? He was the guy that hands down everyone knew had the most potential. Or everyone, he was the oldest out of me, Mark, me and Chris and him. So Shawn protected his career and picked his fights. We were just kind of what kid that got thrown in to come along with if we got Hominick a good card, like we'll give you Stout, we'll give you this guy, we'll give you Horodecki, and we'd fill up an undercard for Hominick in the early days at least. Like, so Hominick fought for the TKO title in his first pro fight.
What?
Against Richard Nanku. And the reason they gave him that is because he was tearing through everybody kickboxing. And he had a loss to Nanku in a pancreation tournament in the past, and he wouldn't tap, and Nanku snapped his arm. So there was a backstory. So, and then he was on this tear, then he hadn't lost a kickboxing fight at all ever. So they gave him the automatic title shot, and then he dusted him. So then that's how the legend of Mark Hominick started. But in those,
Chris, as we know, Pancrase is heavily kind of influenced by submissions and grappling and positions. I think at this time, the entire Team Tompkins probably wasn't ready for anything Pancrase related, because you guys were, raw power and stand-up, which was frowned upon in the Pancrase organization.
Yeah, and we were strikers, we were kickbox. This was still back in those days though, when you'd see striker versus grappler, and a wrestler versus a kickboxer. It was still like the old school UFC 1 kind of mentality, right? Where it was, yeah. So we started picking things up, but Canada does not have, a lot of great wrestling schools or wrestling programs. Like my high school didn't even have a wrestling team.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was still new enough that, we were starting to get some good seasoned Brazilians, but they were mostly going to the States. There wasn't really a lot of guys here. The ones that were here were like Wagner Fabiano was was close by, but he wasn't with us. He was far enough away that he wasn't, we weren't learning from him. And then Fabio Holanda was in Montreal with our competition. So yeah, so we were going out. We'd drive out to Chicago and train with Jeff Curran. But even then, it's like we can't be road tripping to Chicago all the time. We got lives here, and I was 19. I was still in school. I was trying to get a job I was trying to finish school for paramedics, become a paramedic, and
Horodecki was as well, correct?
What's that?
Horodecki was,
yeah. I went through the first year of the paramedic program. I did like a health science and then paramedics, and then I ended up getting signed to the UFC before my my last year started. So I ended up putting it on the back burner and never quite going back to it. But that was the plan for me. So, but just saying, I like, there was so little money in it that you couldn't just give up. You couldn't just pack up and drive off to Chicago, like go to Chicago and do a camp there anytime you want, because I still had shit to take care of back home,
Yeah.
Brother, man, my whole time I was in the UFC, I was a fireman, so I've been following the fireman for 20 years now. So, I know what you mean. You couldn't just, back in especially early 2000, if you fought for money, you were either stupid or bad at math, because there wasn't money there. You know what I mean? So, I could pay one bill. Yeah, you got a lot of bills, brother. So, everybody had to have other jobs. You couldn't. Those people just fought. Hats off to you, man, because that would have been a tough living for a while.
Yeah, I was young enough. I still lived at my parents' house, so so that was. So I didn't have too many bills at that point.
I don't think my wife or kids would have liked that.
Yeah. No.
You mentioned some Canadian guys brought back memories and stuff like early names and stuff like that, and also looking for training. Did you ever run into Bocek, Mark Bocek?
You know what? It's funny that him and I never got matched up together. It was like always one of those ones that it was like, oh, am I gonna have to fight this dude? Because that's a bad matchup for me. But I would have done it but it just never came to fruition. There was never, you think on one of those early Canadian cards or something. But no, I never really trained with him. Hominick and Horodecki trained with him a little bit in Toronto. They said amazing, like they couldn't say enough about how good his jiu-jitsu was, but they also said he kind of had the personality of a cardboard cutout, but
yeah, he's a little flat sometimes. So
no offense to him. Yeah.
So you're also talking about not having the wrestling. Wrestling's something that's very hard to pick up on if you haven't started from the time you were young. So do you guys bring in good wrestling coaches, or how did you guys just on take down the fence and strike?
We were trying to wrestle. We started wrestling. There's University of Western Ontario, which is like a pretty big school here. So we started jumping into their wrestling practices a little bit. But we were basically just trying to pick up bits and pieces of our jiu-jitsu game, our wrestling game, wherever we could. So, and then there was a guy, Rob McDonald, who was a pretty decorated wrestler by Canadian standards. He was on Ultimate Fighter season 2 or 3, I believe. Yeah. So he was way too big to be a great training partner, but he helped us with our technique and stuff like that. So he'd run practices and you know, we were pretty much, oh, you wrestled in high school? Like, come on down to the gym and show us what you know, because we were just kind of trying to start a fire rubbing 2 sticks together at that point.
I love the,
you know, Chris, like, having watched like all of his fights up until this point, his wrestling was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, how could it not have been, man? I mean,
who's mine?
Yo, dude, you're
oh yeah. I mean, I still, it's like one of those things. It's like I still train a lot of wrestling. I still try and
well, you got really good at it. You got really good at it later on.
In the beginning, I go back and watch some of those old fights. I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? Yeah. Like, I'm screaming at myself in the TV, like, hit the switch, man. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Defend the single. What are you doing? Oh man, it's frustrating to go back and watch those old days. But that's what we had to work with. We were just doing the best with what we had.
Yeah.
You know?
So, like, for instance, like, I'm watching these beginning fights of Sam's, and I'm like, wow, you know, this guy's like a fish out of water. And it brings us to your first TKO fight, Yves, who later on actually went down to 135 and fought in the UFC. We had a fantastic fight against Brad Pickett. But
he went down to 45 and then 50 and then 35. He fought Hominick at 35 too.
Right. So Yves at this point is insulted by the matchup with Sam because he says Sam is just so much lower than me. Like, I'm so much better than Sam. Like,
he actually said this?
Yeah. Do you remember that, Sam?
Yeah, he was talking a lot of trash. So I was kind of the gatekeeper on that one because he was calling out Hominick. He was the champion in another organization that was like the one competing with TKO or UCC back in those days or whatever it was. And so he was calling out Hominick in the press. And so yeah, I ended up being the gatekeeper on that one. It was like, okay, if you beat Stout, then you can have a shot at Hominick. So he went up to 150. I think he fought mostly at 145 back then too. He only went up to 155 when the UFC didn't have a 155-pound division. But he thought I was going to be a walk in the park. But I mean, as shitty as my wrestling was, I was strong and I was athletic, so I could, and I knew how to, and I got pretty good at not getting submitted. So, and I could take a punch. So I'd weather the storm on the ground, get back to my feet, and we always had great gas tanks. So it was like I could wear you down if I can get you too tired that you can't shoot on me anymore, and then I got you. So that's why a lot of my fights went that way, right? I lost the first round of probably, I don't know what the stats are, but a lot of
all of them.
Yeah.
but Chris, I think we can both agree that's a really hard way to win a fight. Like, I just got to get him tired by taking me down, taking tons of punches, and then once he's tired, I'll beat him.
I mean, I'm admitting that now. At that time in my life, I was deluding myself into thinking I was going to go out and knock him in the first round every time. And the reality was I didn't know how to wrestle. I'd start timing. I could defend takedowns once they were a little winded. But hey,
everything's easier then, yeah.
I mean, it was a brand new sport, right? Like, I mean, there was, it wasn't a lot.
It's hard to believe when I look back at it, man. I mean, like you're talking about 2003, that sport was really 10 years old and it didn't progress very fast. Like you're saying, I still remember going, forever, what does this guy do? He's a kickboxer. Okay, what's he do? He's a wrestler. I mean, very few people were cross-training efficiently. You know what I mean? So when people started coming in, it's like, geez, this guy can box and he can do submissions. What are you going to do? Who can anybody beat this guy? And it's like, everybody does that shit now. It's just so weird how long it took,
Go back and look at some of those old fights, and then you look at what they're doing now, and it's incredible, man. Like, if you can't do everything now, then
no chance.
You got no chance. I mean, the only exception to that right now is, Adesanya doesn't have an offensive wrestling game, but he's got 85% takedown defense rate, and he can get back to his feet. Right.
or heavyweights. You throw them out because they're not real fighters. I don't think heavyweights are terrible. They're not good at two things ever. They're just big and strong. Right. So take them out of the equation. You're right.
Yeah,
Sorry, any heavyweight watching. You guys suck.
Hey, I'm a heavyweight. Hey, but Sam, though, one of the things, to give the good and the bad of TKO, we're talking about Stephane Patry now, and
he's got a bunch of fights in TKO.
And the thing about Stephane is if he liked you and he match made well for you, like he took care. Like I remember, like some of their first big shows, he headlined with like a guy who was a boxer from Canada that was well known, and like he could take care of you. Did you feel he took care of you, or were you still?
He took great care of me and Hominick, for sure. Yeah, and then Horodecki for a short period of time signed with him, but he really liked us. I mean, Shawn always had a stable full of guys, so he could put an undercard together for him. You needed guys from Ontario because it was always the French guys versus the Ontario English guys, right? So, and then I can speak French too, so I could play that card and kind of, I had the French crowd behind me for some of those fights if I wasn't fighting like one of the, Montreal guys or whatever. So I think we were just marketable for him, and we became friends and he took care of us. But yeah, I know. He definitely didn't take care of everyone. There's some people that but every time they hear his name, that puts him in a bad mood for sure. But he did take care of me, that's for sure. Yeah.
So like TriStar, that was kind of like their home organization.
Yeah.
And you guys had a bit of a rivalry, Team Tompkins and TriStar.
Yeah.
How did it start? Was it just regular, just competition, or was it other things?
I mean, Shawn Tompkins was a very competitive guy. That was even like pre-TriStar though. TriStar, I was like, there was a bunch of smaller gyms that eventually became TriStar, but there was like they didn't all come together until a little bit later, I think. But it was just us. It was Team Tompkins versus the province of Quebec, basically. Like we fought every Frenchman that they could throw at us. So that I had those two. I had the loss and the draw going into that Yves Jabouin fight, and then I went 9 wins in a row or 10 wins in a row until I fought in the UFC. So. Nice. And I do my pre-fight interview and I'd say a little bit in French and, I'd go bang French girls after the fights and, I made it my home.
You French Canadian women are some of the most gorgeous women in the entire world.
I married one.
Yes. Yeah.
I hope she agrees that. She's going to bitch at me for saying that you said she's not the first one.
No.
Well, and the thing is Montreal, like by many standards, especially American standards, is pretty liberal with what they allow in clubs too.
Oh yes. Oh my God, man! Some of those parties after were insane. We wouldn't finish the fight, so we'd have to go to like an after hours club, and those places are a zoo. It's like it's a very Hell's Angels town, so there's bikers everywhere. They're selling drugs in the bathrooms. There's co-ed bathrooms where there's chicks and like you're taking a piss and there's a girl and walks out of the stall beside you. I remember one time there was one of our old one of our old teammates. His name was Aaron Trigger. He was our 170 pounder, good lefty, real tough guy. And he was like he grew up in the same small town as Hominick, or Thamesford. So he goes to those parties like, this place is fucking crazy. And you remember those you remember the trough urinals that they have at like the old football stadiums?
Of course. They put like ice in it.
So they have this co-ed bathroom with stalls on both walls, and then they have this trough sink in the middle. So he's like, this place is crazy. They have a trough urinal and it's a co-ed bathroom. We're like, Trig, that's the fucking sink, bro. So he's in a co-ed bathroom with his dick out, pissing in the sink. And nobody even batted an eyelash. It was like, fuck, those places are nuts. Montreal's a fun place.
That's funny.
Yeah, we almost lost Aaron Riley there one time, or maybe twice.
Yeah, I think we're still looking for a few of the lesser known Team Tompkins guys are still probably there right now.
Somewhere looking for the team bus. So at TKO 17, you fought a really interesting guy that we've actually talked about a few times on this podcast already, Steve Claveau, who was with Team Legion at the time. Yeah. You guys also, I mean, out of all of the rivalries that I was aware of that Team Tompkins had, I'd say the most fierce one was between Team Legion and yourself. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they were, like Steve Claveau, we get along now, but he was just a real outspoken, real brash, real cocky dude. And he called out Hominick. Hominick beat him. He called out me. I beat him. We beat all his guys. And yeah, so eventually we had to they kind of squashed the beef because
there's really not a lot to say after that, man. I mean, no, when you don't win either fights,
I don't think any one of us ever lost to any one of their guys. So
So where did the rivalry start at? Was it just a regional thing?
What, TKO?
No, was it a regional thing, like in regards to the rivalry between Team Legion and Team Tompkins?
Yeah, it was just a regional thing. It's just, they were from like small town Quebec, Victoriaville, Quebec, which is like, out in the middle of nowhere, and not a single English speaking person in that whole town. Like, so there's, if you get into those small towns in the province of Quebec, if you go to Montreal, everyone speaks French, everyone speaks English. It's, you can get by all right. But you go to even Quebec City is like, they don't like English speaking people. I remember being a kid and they did a province wide vote to separate the province of Quebec from Canada. And the vote came down. The number at the end of the vote was 49% wanted to leave, 51 wanted to stay, and that's how close it was. 1% away from
secession,
like Quebec. Yeah, from them being a spot in the middle of Canada that wasn't Canada.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So with Claveau,
I could have sworn, didn't like George St. Pierre have like a tattoo or something? I thought represented that, like they're separatists or something.
I don't know. Well, he's got the fleur de lis, so that's kind of like, I mean,
is that it?
People I think that might be a little bit of,
Okay. Somebody told me that. I go, really? They said they want Quebec to be not part of Canada. I was like, okay.
I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me back in those days. Like when I first met George, he didn't speak a lick of English. He's from one of those small towns, so he might have grown up being like, I mean, that's just how they brought you up then. It was like, fucking Anglophones. Like they and still to this day, like if you go and like, even in Montreal, sometimes if you go there and you're like, if you talk to them, like, if you just speak English and you don't even make an effort, a lot of them will just be the like servers, people in the industry, people will just, they'll basically just ignore it and pretend you're not even there.
Man, that's when you got to come back with the tabernacle. That's all I know. That's all. It's a bad word.
So I mean, it was never so bad for me. I went to French immersion as a kid. My mom grew up in Montreal, so I learned to speak French as a kid. So I got by there all right. And that's on the flip side of that coin. If you're English and they're like they're gonna have a hate on for you, and then you start speaking French to them, then they're like, oh, maybe this guy's not so bad. So I always had a good time there.
You had mentioned that Team Legion is from a really small area in Quebec. So why is George St. Pierre always in Claveau's corner?
He just, I don't know. They just hit it off early. He always had really great things to say. George was in his corner when I fought him.
Yes.
That's when I first met him. That's one of the, that was the first time I met George, like in person and not just like seeing him at a weigh-in or whatever. But the first time we spoke, and he was like, if you keep up, keep doing what you're doing, you'll be in the UFC in a couple of years. And that I was like, oh, a little kid, just, 19, 20-year-old kid, like George St. Pierre thinks I can make it. It was a good, boost, a memorable moment for me.
So like he had Patrick Cote. I've seen him with Lusau in his corner, and George St. Pierre's constantly in his corner. And like, he's from a real small town in Canada. He's got like the 666 across his head. He's pretty upfront about being a Satanist. It's just a really it's bizarre. Like, I can't wrap my head around it.
Hey man, I'm from Ontario. I don't know either.
So
dude, it's like a different country. Like if you like, there's a lot of people I know that go to Montreal for the first time, and it's like you don't feel like you're in Canada anymore. Or Montreal's got a more European vibe, but if you go way off the beaten path into those small towns, it's like it's hostile territory. It's so I can't speak to what's going on in their heads too much, you know.
Okay, so let's talk about it like on a regional level then. So he's with Team Legion, and it's almost like he passes on his own coach to have George St. Pierre and Patrick, coed corner him. Like, I don't know how conversations like that take place.
I mean, it's a famous. I mean, how many times have you seen guys who have made it really far in the sport of MMA, and then once they make it, like maybe they take the next jump and get to the UFC and they switch teams. It's like, wait a second, why the fuck are you switching teams now? This is what got you here. And, and more often than not, they, it doesn't work out for them.
Well, and a lot of times they go jumping from team to team to team whenever they lose. I'm like, man, it might not be the team, brother. It might be you.
Yeah, what's the common denominator?
I never think it's good when you want to be with the people who got you there, who understand you and brought you in. If you go to another team, you're just a body to them. They don't have that relationship or that care. It's like, yeah, I'm here to help. You're a payday. I mean, it's not the same. You always need to stay, if possible. I mean, sometimes if there's nobody to train with, it's different, but that's rarely the case.
But if you're going to go, I think my theory on it is, by all means, like my gym, for example, we just like I was saying before, we bought Hominick and I bought the building. So we kind of put all our chips on the table and said, okay, we need to make this gym work as a business, as much as, as a place to build new fighters. So, we've got the place off the ground, bills are getting paid, but so now it's time to refocus on the fighters. So I'm training a young team of fighters. So I just had a 185er fight in Vancouver 2 weeks ago. And, biggest problem we had was not having enough training partners. So if he comes to me and says, hey, I got Elias Theodoro, I got, Adam Jeffries, who are two of the top kind of 185 or 205ers in the country, I'm like, by all means, go train with those guys. Go get your work in anytime you want. Don't feel guilty about it. But that if you're gonna go train with another team, don't just abandon your old team. Like, go work out some kind of functional relationship between the two teams.
Hey, bring back what you've learned to here, man.
Exactly.
Well, okay. So let's get off the fights just for a little second. Like, Sam, you're super conversational. It makes it easy. So what you and Chris just talked about was a coach and a poacher. And they're two very important things in the mixed martial arts, and necessary. Both are very necessary, but also very different. Shawn Tompkins was 110% a coach.
Yeah.
In fact, like we've said it in past podcasts when discussing the Canadian scene, my personal belief is that after Shawn had passed, I think the entire country took a dip in terms of producing talent. For a few years, there wasn't even a Canadian in the top 10 outside of the women's divisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what I would attribute that to is, we had this rivalry, right? We had Shawn's team, the Ontario guys, myself, and all the guys that were coming up through Team Tompkins and Shawn was always had an open door policy and would, we befriended all the other gyms in our area, and we'd have their guys come train with us and we'd go train with them. And, but once Shawn was out of the picture, then it stopped driving. There was no competition within the grassroots Canadian MMA scene, right? Then there'd be, there was guys from, the TriStar guys would just breeze through everyone else who was, there was no valid competition for them. So then by the time they get there, they haven't been tested all the way through their kind of coming up. While they were coming up, they weren't being tested. And then they get to the big show and it's a big reality check.
I mean, it's like, we would say steel sharpens steel. When you don't get there, then all of a sudden, you progress. And like you said, all of a sudden they're here and they make it to the UFC. That's like a 5-level jump, and they never went through those 5 levels. So they're not ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my theory on that. Why, and I think we're starting to catch up. I think in the next few years, like I'm now that we've got this kind of business off the ground, I think I'm really going to dedicate myself. I already have started to dedicate myself a lot more to kind of building guys and getting more guys to the show, but more guys experience and kickboxing fights and MMA fights. And, I want to get kind of start rebuilding that in this part of the country.
Now, Sam, I got a question for you here about this. I mean, man, from my experience, fighter gyms are tough to produce good fighters because they're losers. And usually, they don't make a lot of money. It's very difficult because you have to mix in the cardio kickboxing with the kids program to pay the bills, and you have to have that and the fighter. So a lot of times it's either one or the other. You have a successful gym, they don't have a lot of fighters, or you have a gym that has a lot of fighters. It's difficult to do both. How important is it for you to make fighters out of this gym and not just make money out of it?
I think the way I'm still figuring it out as I go. And that definitely, I'll be honest with you, that definitely is a challenge.
It is.
No, because priority number one is, you
got to make money.
You got to invest a lot of time as a coach before you ever see a return. And if you ever see a return. So, we do have to make sure the business is solid, but I think it's just dedicating time to, and I'm not going to go in, and it's not going to be like any kid or anyone off the street who wants to be the next UFC fighter is going to get to jump into my training sessions. I'm not going to be holding pads for somebody who doesn't have. You got to go in, you got to come into the gym, and you got to prove that you got what it takes before I even start, putting you through the ringer and seeing if you really do have what it takes. You got to have it up here. You got to have those, the natural born things, or you got to walk in the door with a few things. You got to walk in with, a strong work ethic, which cannot be taught. You got to be, you got to be disciplined, and you got to be an athlete, and you got to be tough. So you got to have those 4 things. You can't because you can't teach somebody, if somebody's natural instinct is to, when they get hit, is to shell up and turtle. Sometimes you can't break that. So I'm not going to, as cutthroat as it sounds, I'm just not going to waste my time with people who don't belong, who I can see don't belong there. Right.
Sam, you're saying a lot of the same stuff. I always talk about that. You have these several different factors, dedication, work ethic. And athletic ability didn't used to be the case as much, but now, if you a lot of guys who have 2 or 3 of these things, but you have to have all 4 to be a legit fighter.
That's the game now.
I've seen so many guys who are athletic and they're tough, hard nosed, and then they'll disappear for a month at a time. It's like, you can't do that. You have to have the time to. There's so many different factors, and I've seen guys who are great, dedicated, but no athletic ability. It just takes one factor to not be there, and it's not there. And the worst thing is when you have a guy and they have these factors and they start disappearing. Like, dude, I could have made you. What are you doing? It's so frustrating when that happens.
And then going back to what we were saying before. Sometimes you train them, you get them there, and then they jump ship and they go, and then they go
the poachers. The poachers.
Yeah.
The poachers get them.
I got a clue. So one of the names, obviously, that you brought up here talking about training is one of those guys that turned out to be really special. And I remember Stephane Patry at some point was like, hey, I got this guy. I think he's pretty good. And I think I sent one of my hitmen up, and he got the long head of George St. Pierre. When did you realize St. Pierre was really that next level guy, the special guy? Especially as a rival,
I think it was after the Pete Spratt fight. Do you remember that? And
yes.
Yeah. And it was like, Pete Spratt, I was a big fan because I loved a good stud striker. Yeah. And just the way George just demolished him. I was like, and I had watched George kind of like tearing through everyone, but I still wasn't aware of, I was like, maybe he's just a big fish in a small pond. And then watching him, watching him and that was right after Pete had who was it that he fought?
Robbie Lawler.
He kicked his hip right out of his socket.
Yeah.
He kicked in the inside of his leg so hard that he dislocated his like a ball and socket, like the hardest joint in your body to. Like, I was like, damn, I don't like, that's scary. That's some scary shit. And then George just toyed with them.
Yeah.
So Sam, you talked about the vetting process that you have in your gym.
Yeah.
What was the vetting process like with Shawn Tompkins? Because if you look at like the stable that he put together, it was all homegrown guys, and he raised killers. So what was that initiation that he had? Where you knew he accepted you.
It was, I mean, part of it was like just the numbers game. Like he was just there was a lot of guys that didn't make it. There was, Shawn was an old school martial artist, and a country boy with a tough old man. And, he was a tough motherfucker. He was, so if you couldn't take, the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the day-to-day grind, and then you had to go drinking on the weekends and show up on Monday you had to have he was kind of constantly testing your mental toughness, your physical toughness, all that. And we did a lot of road trips and so our kickboxing days was kind of how we all started out and how Shawn really got his real start as a coach. And we would literally take any fight that we could get. Like he'd be emailing people, looking people up, calling people, every martial arts contact that he had. We'd go all over Canada. We'd go all over the Midwest. I think we drove to St. Louis one time. It was it was fucking crazy, man. We drive for 16 hours to fight three. And this is amateur. Wow. We drive 16 hours and I'd go fight 3 2-minute rounds sometimes. It was just like, so it was constant. And it was like, so if you didn't really, really, really badly want it, if you didn't really badly want to be there, then you were just gonna kind of drift off into the, the abyss. And we were fighting every weekend. So if you weren't in the gym for a month and you weren't being dedicated, then we just kind of forgot about you and we just move on. So it was, it was a constant battle to stay relevant in the gym. And then, that kind of got us ready just for the battle to stay relevant in the fight world. So
the one thing that I noticed of Shawn was that like life experiences, like you just discussed, were really important to him. So when you're fighting at the highest of levels, he would grab Chris, to help corner him where he could have had Mark or somebody else a little bit more seasoned and experienced in your gym, but he'd rather take the young guy so the young guy can get in his head and get used to one day this is going to be you and you better be ready. Oh, that's kind of what I took from like looking at him and we took to corner yourself and Hominick for that fact.
Yeah, I think he wanted us all to share in each other's successes and each other's failures. And I think that kind of gave us more experience without having to always be the one stepping in the cage. It gave us the experience of the travel, the weight cuts, whether we were doing it or helping somebody else do it or sitting cage side. It was just always
the schedule. Yeah, just the schedule.
Yeah, and that keeps a cohesiveness in a team that I think a lot of teams don't have, right? You got a lot of great teams and great camps where guys are having their fight and then you don't see them again until their next camp starts. And, there's guys that, and then you get these guys that, I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find a team that's got more loyalty than what we had in those days. And part of that was Shawn was such a great leader too, right? He was, so good at inspiring us. And he was so like, you could tell he was so emotionally invested in all our wins and losses that it was hard not to be emotionally invested in each other's and emotionally invested in his success too.
Well, here, let's take it a step further. You guys are a bunch of amateurs just cutting your teeth, doing the grind. He's got you guys driving to St. Louis, to Chicago, like almost every weekend. How did he pay for those trips? Because I most certainly probably came out of his pocket.
Yeah. I mean, we were we were getting gas. You know, it was amateurs, but we'd get a little bit of gas money from the promoters. We'd all like, there'd be 6 of us sleeping in a hotel, like one room. We'd have, you know,
old
like,
school. Love it.
yeah, like it was old school. And then, yeah, we'd rent a Dodge Caravan. I remember one time driving to Ottawa, which is about a 6-hour drive, and they didn't have a Dodge Caravan. They had one Dodge Caravan and one a Grand Prix, and we had to put 7 people in a Grand Prix to get to in like a mid-sized sedan. We have 4 guys sitting in the back seat, like sitting on
Clown car.
My sister's in the front seat, sitting on Sean's lap for a 6-hour drive in the fucking passenger seat.
Oh my God.
We did like. So I mean, we were pinching pennies the whole way, but I mean that was part of those are some of the best memories of my life, though. Those,
absolutely.
It's
the grind.
Those were the days.
You get your hands dirty,
and you know, we'd be staying in hotels that like were just like you know how it is with some of these promoters, especially on an amateur card.
Oh,
it's like they're trying to save every cent they can. I remember going to one place that had a cigarette burn in the little armchair there, big enough you could drop an apple through it. We pulled the sheets back. We pull the blankets back. There's blood stains on the sheets. I'm like, God damn, this is ghetto as fuck. We all slept with our shoes on, our clothes on. Like it was a crazy time.
You know, Sam, it's funny because that's one of the reasons I kind of fell in love at the beginning with the bare knuckle fight scene, because I'm like, it's not quite like that, but it reminds you don't get that anymore with like UFC stuff. So when you go back and it's still a new organization, still growing, it's like, man, there's a lot of similar mentality. I can hear some of these fighters talking. It's like, it's not like a seasoned veteran. So it's pretty awesome. It's like a throwback for me. It brings me back in time. So I'm just cracking up. I'm like, this is funny as can be, because I remember this 20 years ago in the UFC. You know what I mean? So that's why one of the reasons I like that you get that feel again. I mean, and I keep telling people, they'll be like, after the fights, everybody's hanging out at the hotel, you know, and everybody's hanging out in the lobby drinking. I'm like, enjoy this, because in 10 years, people are going to have their after fight party at Pure, whatever, you know, it ain't going to happen like this. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, people are going to be doing this in 10 years. So enjoy it. It's fun.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I honestly, like the whole, you know, I had just shy of a decade in the UFC, and I got some great memories from that. But the ones that kind of stay closest to my heart are those road trips with the boys.
Oh yeah,
those are the days, man. Those are the days.
I'm a matchmaker, but from where I live to Evansville, where we did the show, I drove it basically about 25 times for the shows. And I couldn't do it faster than 9 hours and 45 minutes. That was the fastest I could ever do it. So that was my drive back. And then leave the show, you're all pumped up, making match, driving home, just going crazy. So yeah, it definitely brings back memories, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that brings us to TKO 18. Sam, in my opinion, this may have been one of your hardest fights in your entire career. When you fought Dave Goulet, another Team Legion member.
Oh, Goulet.
Yeah. That was Jonathan Goulet's brother.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I mean, it was probably your hardest first 2 rounds of your entire career, including the UFC, because it was
I got beat up.
And it was a savage beating for 2 rounds. So why don't you walk us through it and kind of let everyone know what happened?
I rewatched that one too, and it was like, you know, they had the blueprint. The blueprint to beat me wasn't too hard to figure out, right? You had to be in good shape, you had to take me down, and you had to hold me down, right? So he did it. He did it successfully for the first 2 rounds. I was like, I remember I had my you can probably still see the scar that split my lip. I was like, I had 2 upper lips. I was like, I was banged up, and then he was just pounding on me, and I went back and watched that fight, and I'm like, get an underhook, get your back to the cage, get up. I just laid there on my back like a turtle,
flat.
I remember being on my back, slipping punches, like it was like in a stand-up fight. I wasn't trying to do anything, and it's so frustrating to watch it. But same thing. It became a battle of attrition, and that was one thing I was good at, right? So eventually, I think it was in the third. I don't know if he took me down and I got up in the third round, or if it was just he couldn't get me down anymore in the third round. And then I went something like jab to the head, cross the body, hook to the head, and high kicked him, and he just turned around. I don't even think it was like a legit knockout. He if you watch the fight, he turns towards the camera, just says "fuck this," and then nosedives into the canvas, and that was the end of the fight. So,
Chris, this is not the first guy that retired from exhaustion against Sam from literally pounding on him. This is the first one.
Yeah,
there's one
like
later
Homer,
on that we're gonna
remember
get
the one where Homer Simpson becomes the Simpsons, where his game plan is just.
I brought that. I've told people I've got Homer Simpson syndrome. Like my brain, my skull's too thick.
Yeah, you could hit me in the head with a baseball bat. Yeah.
I love
Sam,
it. Why me?
Now, if I have to guess, Stephane Patry took notice of your hard work here. And I know Joey Brown, but he's not your level. He gave you an easy fight the next time out.
That was the one. That was the one gimme I got for sure.
Sam, with Goulet, like it was a brutal beating that Sam took. Does your family kind of come and try to sit you down and say, what are we doing?
I didn't get that talk until much later in my career, but I did get that talk one time. I got that talk after I fought after I fought Jeremy Stevens in Montreal.
Okay.
And we won fight of the night. I lost a split decision. It was a fairly close fight, but that dude could hit like a truck. And I just went in there, and I don't know. I was coming off that big win to Joe against Joe Lozon. Maybe my confidence was a little too high, but I went in there and I didn't move my feet. I didn't fight like. I was usually pretty good in a stand-up fight because I was hard to land a clean punch on because I kept my feet moving really well. With him, I just got suckered into this. Let's stand in the middle of the fucking cage and see who falls down first. And that dude, I think that fight took a couple of years off my career for sure.
Wow.
Those fights aren't good for you, but they're fun, man.
Yeah.
So we thank you.
So right around this time, you start going to Crystal Lake and training with Jeff Curran and Bart Palaszewski. Like that's probably right after this bout. Am I correct?
After the TKO 17 or 18?
18. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right. Would have been right in that era. Yeah.
So how does that connection take place? And tell us your experiences while working out with Jeff Curran.
How did we get hooked up with him in the first place?
Yes.
The first, I think Mark went out to Hawaii to fight on a Rumble on the Rock card. And Jeff was on that card. I think that's where him and Shawn met. And then we, so they just kind of, Jeff,
I think Jeff was cornering Joe Riggs.
I can't remember.
It may have been later on. I don't know. I apologize. Go ahead.
So, but that's where the connection, that's where the meet happened. And, Shawn, it was in those early days, and Jeff was a jiu-jitsu guy. So Shawn was a striker. So it's like, hey, let's start working together. Maybe we can bring each other's levels up a little bit. So yeah, that's how that connection happened. And it was great because then we finally had a jiu-jitsu coach that could
legit
somebody.
Well,
we finally, for the first time ever, had somebody we could call our jiu-jitsu coach, which was, the first time. And this is after, already fighting pro for however many years. Right. So yeah, it was, I mean, if I could go back and do it again, I would have found a jiu-jitsu coach a lot earlier.
So how was your experience at Team Curran? It was a beautiful facility at that time.
He's gone through a bunch of beautiful facilities. He's building one every time I look at his Instagram. He's building a new gym. I don't know. It's like, but anyways, yeah, a beautiful facility, like unlike any I'd ever seen at that point. We were used to training in a hole in the wall. We were in like an old warehouse with leaky, there'd be drips coming off the ceilings and, no air conditioning in the summer, no heat in the winter, those kind of places. And then Jeff has this beautiful place but it was very much like a family gym. And we had to, there was a few more rules that we had to follow and stuff like that. But, but it was great. It was, I'd go out there for 2-3 weeks, at some point, midway through my camp, really kind of come up with a jiu-jitsu game or a grappling game plan, or, kind of, at that point, I don't know if I really was, or if I just felt this way, but I always felt like I was really behind in all these grapplers. So I was usually working on, spotting tendencies that opponent had and learning how to neutralize them, as opposed to being offensive on the ground, which, I wish I would have kind of gained a little more confidence in my ground game a little earlier, but whatever, it is what it is. I got a lot of bonuses. So,
at that point, like, I would say shortly after you started to go with Team Curran, working out with them, your jiu-jitsu kind of like fluidity on your back was night and day. Like, you leveled up quick.
Yeah. Jeff, you guys know Jeff. He's such a, his jiu-jitsu is so high level, and he's been in MMA since like the early like forever. So yeah, it was a great fit in terms of Mark and Jeff, and then myself and Jeff also. I'd go stay at his house. I'd go stay with him and his wife Sarah, and that was before they had the boys. But I'd go stay with him. Bart Palaszewski and I always really got along really well. We were the same weight. We weren't fighting in the same organization, so we always hit it off and made great training partners. And brought each other's levels up. So that was also a really fun time in my life. And it was the first time I got to, go leave my parents' house, go stay with, go stay on the road and kind of it's a foreign country to me, right? It's like, and, kind of go branch out and be my own man a little bit. So that was cool. And I'm still to this day thankful to Jeff.
Yeah, no, for sure. So TKO 20, you fought Tyler Jackson. And this is one of those fights where you had two guys that were very good at stand-up. And you had, although worked on your jiu-jitsu at Team Curran, there was like 0 minutes on the ground in the totality of this bout. Probably one of your harder fights, actually, including the UFC bouts.
Yeah, that was... And not to take anything away from Tyler Jackson, that dude was fucking tough. But I got real bad food poisoning the week before, like 1 week to the day before the fight. It was the only time I never had to cut weight for a fight, because I puked all the weight out right before. So I think I lost a little bit of finishing power on my punches. But yeah, that dude was he had a head like a fucking cinder block, and and he just. And, I had spent, and really this went on right till pretty much the end of my career. I had spent so long defending takedowns and spending whole camps learning how not to get taken down and not get submitted. And, that would have been a fight to take somebody down and, try and score some points with top control and some ground and pound, and maybe hunt for a submission, because he was basically the carbon copy of me. And we just went out, and instead we're just like, no, let's go stand in the middle and just punch the shit out of each other. So I don't know. I can't explain what my thought process behind that was, but it got the crowd going. So it is what it is.
It's hard not to do that.
Yeah, in terms of conditioning, like from a fan standpoint, when I'm watching these videos, you see who's got the bounce, like who's still bouncing, who's flat-footed. You were bouncing all the way until the end of this bout. Like, it's shocking what type of cardio you have. What was your regimen at this point?
You know what? I think at that point we were training in this gym that we were on the second floor of this place called the King's Inn in London. It was like a old hotel that they had kind of converted into like really low budget apartments downtown. So we had it was like a 12-story building. So every day our warm up was like 20 minutes of running stairs, and that, so our legs. So yeah, we just ran, and that was just like every single day we'd run stairs for 20 minutes, and
that's miserable.
We'd get about, I want to say, we'd run about 80 flights of stairs to start off every workout. So that was a big part of it. And my conditioning always had to be next level, because I was Hominick's punching bag for so long, you know, and he just was so mentally fucked that all he did was train. Like he was, you know, he was OCD. Like he had obsessive compulsive, and all his compulsions were based around his training. So I'm dead serious. He would like the dude could run a 10K, which is 6 miles in 30 minutes. Like he was fast. If he did get tired, he would never show it at all. So it's like, if I didn't have if my conditioning wasn't up to peak levels, I was going to get my ass beat by Hominick. That was my motivation to get in good shape.
I mean, not to brag or anything, but I can do a 5K in 30 minutes. So, you know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
So the motivation is to stay in shape was to not get my ass beat by Hominick.
No, but that's funny. It paints a real gritty picture, because anytime somebody wants to say, "Hey, we do stairs," you know, you get these like nice action shots, people running in a stadium and stuff, and there you are in like a 12-story building running.
No, a 12-story building. 12-story building in a shitty old hotel with piss in the stairwell and stuff like that. It was nasty.
Yeah, I know a building in Vancouver very much like that. I'll just leave it at that.
So, did you meet Mark Hominick through Shawn Tompkins, or did you guys grow up together?
No, I met him through Shawn, and it just so happens that Shawn was from a small town called Tilsonburg, like a little tobacco farming community. And he had a little gym, a karate gym, and then he started kickboxing, but he ended up, he's like, there's only so much I can do in this small town. So we moved to London and started training and started up his kind of, didn't even have his own gym yet. He was just renting space in a karate dojo to train, do a couple hours a week. And Hominick had sought him out. The karate gym that he rented was where Chris Horodecki was 12 years old at the time doing karate, and he had just started dating my sister. So the three of us coming together was all totally by chance. And we just kind of all were in the right place at the right time.
Man, Tompkins could find talent. Like he really could. I think his biggest asset was understanding who was legit and who wasn't at such an early stage in their lives or careers, to where most people just couldn't even decipher it. Like, that's the thing that impresses me the most about him.
Was Horodecki? I'm sorry. Was Horodecki like a child prodigy like that, like from 12 years old, or?
He was. I think Shawn saw something in him early on, and I remember him saying he's going to be my Muhammad Ali, because he was like the way he could move and the way he could kick. But you look at the guy, and still, like, he's a super hard worker, but he can barely jump over a credit card. He's not a natural born athlete. He's strong, he's tough, and he's a hard worker. That's okay.
Well, I think the real question is Horodecki just a prodigy, or is he a product of a system that he just adapted so well to? Because he's not both.
Yeah, I think he's a product of the system. I think it's, is you look at what happened to all our careers once Shawn was gone, right? And I think, he was kind of the wind in our sails for a long time. And we could barely buy a win after he passed. So, I definitely think he was Shawn just knew how to train people. Shawn just knew how to like bring the best out in people. I think, and I think Chris was, not to say Chris isn't an amazing talent. He's a
talented guy for sure.
But
what he did in the IFL was incredible.
Do I think Chris would have, if Shawn hadn't been teaching those kickboxing classes at another gym, do I think Chris Horodecki still would have been what he was? Probably not. Do I think I would have? Do I think I would have, been what I would? I can tell you for sure, I would not have. I would have been, I probably would have got a job as a paramedic. Probably would have been working and, doing that kind of thing. I never would have been what I, would have been a fighter, would have made anything out of myself in a martial arts career. And Mark might be the only exception to that. He knew what he wanted from childhood, from birth, I think. So he would have found somebody to get him there. But yeah, definitely Shawn. So yeah, Horodecki was product of the system, I think.
No,
so
I just wanted to ask, because one of the things that you're talking about, coaches versus poachers, and obviously we know where Shawn fell into that. Part of that is that the relationship becomes personal. It's that, like, were you guys on like a handshake deal? Were you giving him a percentage of your money? Like how was that?
Shawn?
Yeah, and like was it really just like a friendship?
It was more than a friendship. It was family. It was all on a handshake. Yeah, nothing. Shawn never had anything on paper, and that was something. He was trusting in people sometimes to a fault. Like he got screwed over a few times. I won't name any names, but there was guys he did put in full camps with and fought UFC fights, and it'd be like, hey, take you out for a beer sometime kind of thing. Like like I watched that guy get his heart broken by so many fighters, man. But
well, that's the poacher aspect. Like you're looking at the gym jumpers and you're expecting them to be loyal to you when they couldn't be loyal to their first coach.
Yeah.
You hate to say it, like, well, Shawn was been around so many blocks to where he probably saw it coming, but he was almost like the guy that was addicted to just being a coach. And that's who 100%. He was.
100%. Yeah, he was. That's definitely. Yeah, he ate, slept, and breathed it. The only time off would which led to his probably was one of the reasons for his I'm talking every fighter that he coached. He was so emotionally invested that he was just a ball of stress all the time. So as soon as the fight was over, he was going wild. Like it was going to be the rest of the weekend until he got back to the gym on Monday was going to be like, let's see how hard we can push this.
Party time. Yeah.
It was like he would be,
I mean, it's almost like I get like, especially as a fighter, it's when that stress reliever of that fight is over. I mean, you haven't been doing anything for 2 months. You just let it all go. But that's one person. It'd be hard to do that day in. I mean, like every weekend you have that stress ball. I'd be so tough because I know it was my stress level for me, but it was over after that. Then you have another month and then it starts. But I mean, if he was doing that all the time, that'd be so tough on your body, man.
He was overlapping. It'd be like doing overlapping training camps. You'd get one guy and he would just do it in that weekend. It was like fight Saturday night. Go as hard, and then drink until Sunday night, and then start all over again. And I feel bad, in hindsight. I'm saying all this stuff in hindsight, right? Like the writing was on the wall, and we kind of should have spotted it earlier, and maybe it'd still be around if we would have.
He was burning the candle at both ends for sure.
Yeah, but that's who he was. That's who he was, and I know for a fact he was happy doing it. Even when he was happy doing it, even when he was miserable. So,
that's what made him great.
The one, and we're talking about your TKO years here. So, and a lot of it obviously involves Shawn Tompkins, which is why he's getting brought up a lot. But I'd almost like to further the conversation in regards to him. Like the MMA community is incredibly fickle. Like if you're just a straight wrestler, they're looking at you like, eh. If you're just a sport jiu-jitsu guy, they're like, eh. Yeah. Shawn was a stand-up kickboxing Muay Thai guy.
Yeah.
And he trained, and I don't think he ever won an MMA bout. I think he did 2 or 3 fights and lost, but then created this incredible MMA team where some of the best camps in the world go, wait a minute, we got to accept him, respect him, and understand that, whatever his system is, even though it's just like a pure stand-up system, we got to kind of give it the respect it deserves. Like he was like the first real stand-up guy without the wrestling or jiu-jitsu pedigree to break through. Like you can't give me another name that broke through prior to him.
No, definitely not with somebody with just his background. I mean, Duke eventually kind of.
But Duke came after him.
Yeah, Duke came after.
When Shawn was doing his thing, Duke was making videos on YouTube bad-mouthing jiu-jitsu and MMA. Yeah. I mean, they're still there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It was, you know, I'm still trying to follow in his footsteps, and I'm still dumbfounded by how he did some of this stuff. You know, and I think what it comes down to is just an obsession with martial arts, with MMA, with kickboxing, with whatever it was, with his own legacy and his team's legacy and what he was building. I think he just had a vision in his head, and he wasn't going to rest until he got there.
What happened at Team Quest?
Shawn and Ryan Parsons were not, they just didn't get along. That's, I mean, the long and short of it. Shawn was a hard guy to get along with because, what I was just saying, well,
there's only one head coach.
What's that?
There's only one head coach.
There's only one head coach. Yeah. Ryan Parsons wanted to be that guy. Shawn wanted to be that guy. And it just, I mean, that was all the relationships at gyms that didn't work out with Shawn were, it was just two alpha mentalities, two head coach mentalities that just ended up clashing,
So why did he feel a need to leave London, Ontario? Like he had it made. He was like, people would travel to go to that gym. Why did he feel a need where he had to leave Canada and start hitting, the other major gym circuits?
Well, so our gym in London was a shithole. So,
okay.
So Shawn was not a businessman and wasn't very smart with kind of how he spent his money. So we had this shithole gym, and then all of a sudden it's like, we got a couple fights, and then he got a call. I mean, he did get the reason he went to, like, he got the call from Randy Couture wanting, and Randy wanted him to be the head of his MMA or his striking program or his pro fighter program. So that's a hard kind of offer to pass up. And I think Shawn liked the whole idea of, this larger than life lifestyle that came with or was starting to become a bit more of a reality with mixed martial arts. I mean, Chris, you remember it. It was, I mean, you had the family and the job back home, but I mean, there was, we did, in our little universe, we were a big deal. So, and I think Shawn really loved that. I think that was, he was like one of those guys who loved to be recognized and have people want to take pictures with him. And he wanted his name to be big. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. Like wanting to
be better,
to make your mark, just to make your mark somewhere. So I think he felt like going to Vegas would allow him the opportunities to make his mark on the world a little more than it would be to stay in London, Ontario.
Yeah, I could see that. It's unfortunate because like he had such a good thing going in Canada, and people were going.
Yeah. And I know. I think there's a couple good guys that were coming out of London. I think I definitely think we could have made a very good run, and we could have had like what these New England cartel guys have, where it's like your home gym, homegrown group of guys that really go on, and multiple guys can go on to have a lot of success. I think we could have done that. I just think Shawn just wanted more. He just wanted to be, and really it's hard to argue with it, because I remember being in, and he didn't forget us. He brought us with him.
Yeah.
And I remember being at Extreme Couture for pro practice, and I was like, God damn, there's a lot of big name dudes here. And it was like, there's Forrest Griffin, there's Mike Pyle, there's Vanderlei Silva, there's Randy Couture, there's like this name. I remember we once counted 27 guys that were actively fighting in the UFC, Pride, or IFL. 27 guys on the same mat. 27 guys on the same mat. It's crazy.
That's insane.
I think to him, that was just such a dream come true. I think that was the motivation to be in Vegas.
Yeah, you know, he, like you had said, he had his foot on the gas pedal. He had an opportunity to throw it in another gear. And, you know, you're not going to tell a guy like Shawn no at that point.
Nope.
So that brings us to go ahead, Miguel.
I got a little nerd question. We mentioned the Tyler Jackson fight. And I like to ask about Canadian guys I know and get your opinion and stuff. Was he already with Mahood in that group? And what's your opinion of the Western guys?
I was actually just with Ryan Diaz, and I saw Dennis Kang last weekend. I had one of my guys, one of Dennis Kang guys. He beat my guy, but it was all good. But I really like those guys, man. And the one thing you got to understand, like you guys are in the U.S., so you had such a big pool of guys, of fighters. We had our little rivalries in the early stages, in the TKO days. But by the time, like at this stage of the game, we're all like, when we see each other, it's like running into old friends. Like Steve Clevo, all the names that you've mentioned, Jonathan Goulet. We all support, you know, once we all made it. We are really, and especially like a lot of our debuts, I think it's the last time they ever tried to do something like this, but my debut in the UFC was UFC 58, and it was the Canada versus US card. Like when have they ever tried to work a gimmick like that again? You know, and so a lot of us were like, you know, we're in competition against each other, not my gym versus your gym. And then we're all sitting in the same locker room together, getting ready to take on the Americans. And, you know, it's like, so, you know, we got, as much as we had those rivalries together, they were sports rivalries. And we kind of, in the long run, we all kind of have a mutual respect and bond with each other.
So July 15, 2005, TKO 21 took place. You fought Donald Ouimet for the TKO title, which was the king of Canada. Like, there's no denying that you guys were 1-2 at the 155-pound weight class. And I know Donald was with TriStar. You're obviously, you know, loyal to Tompkins your entire life. How big of a deal was this fight for you at this time? Because this is the biggest fight of your career. At this point,
100%. It was, you know, it was my dream to win a professional title. And, you know, I'd been going to those TKO events since I was, you know, 17, 18, watching Hominick fight. You know, so I knew I had watched Donald. He hadn't lost in all the time that I had been watching TKO. He was, I don't think he had lost in years. Never been knocked out. Never been, like, he was legit. And he was one of those only French-speaking guys, didn't speak any English. And I was the only guy on the team that could speak any French. So, you know, I talked to him a couple times, and it was like, and we were kind of always sizing each other up, but like in a nice kind of palling way. Like he's an athlete. He's a competitor. He was a great guy and still is a great guy. But yeah, I think I was 21, and the first time we fought, and he was 41. And he was like the old dog, had, you know, the undisputed champ there. And then I was the young up and comer coming to fight. Yeah, and we had that first one was a drag out war.
Yeah, it was a split decision. And in the other corner, you got GSP and David Lusau, who were making huge waves in the UFC at this time.
Yeah. And they did not agree with the decision. But like going back to what we said earlier, split decision in a hometown, a split decision, and this is a split decision win in somebody else's hometown, taking the belt from the champ. I mean, So I came out in enemy territory with the split decision, so that's a win to me. But he hadn't lost in a long time. I respected the guy, and it was close enough, and that he was saying in the French press that I lost the fight and this and that. So I said, okay, let's do the rematch. And we did that. And I gave him an automatic rematch for the next event.
So that was November 5th, actually. That was TKO 23. There was one in between there. And
one event in between.
Yeah, one event.
I always like to take my summers off. So I like to, you know, it's like, maybe it's that the Canadian hockey player mentality, but we like to play golf in the summer. We like to drink beers on the patio. They're so fucking short here. It's like if you go back and look at my record, there's nothing later than like mid-June, and there was never a summer fight.
So where I think Ouimet made the mistake is here. You started the conversation with he'd never been knocked out before. Right. So in the first fight, Ouimet is backing up and counterpunching, and it's pretty effective. In fact, a few people I think probably watched that fight, and even in the UFC, and they kind of enacted that type of that type of strategy against yourself to a degree of success.
Yeah.
Where I think he makes a mistake is he goes and he trains with Dino Clavet, who is a Clavet. He's a pretty famous regional boxer up there. And he decides to stand and trade with you and move forward at this event, which, kind of sealed the deal on your end.
Yeah, I think just the youth on my side. And you have to understand at that stage, I was a little more, my striking wasn't as sharp, but it was a little more reckless, but I think I hit a lot harder because I was less, I cared even less about defending and just, I was a very offensive guy. And he just walked into a right hand and it turned into like a hockey fight where I was holding the back of his neck with one hand and just like go right hands, wherever I could find a hole. I just kept going as hard as I could. Yeah. So there was no question after the second one.
When was the last time you watched that second fight?
Oh man, it's been years.
Okay, so when you're walking out, Shawn Tompkins is standing behind you holding that belt. Bro, I could just, you kind of look at certain, aspects of fights. That guy, I couldn't believe how proud he was of you. And to hold that, I mean, that's a nationally recognized belt. Like, that was the King of Canada belt. And, you had it. You could just see he was beaming with just how proud he was of you as a student.
Yeah. Well, man, that's back to what I was saying. He was so emotionally invested, and that's 100% authentic. That look on his face. He was not good at hiding the way he felt. So, if you say that, that's the truth.
So the one interesting thing, and we're kind of wrapping up with TKO right now. Chris, you look like you're getting tired, so we're gonna.
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Sam, are you okay? I'd like to knock out a couple more fights. Okay. So the thing about Stephane Patry is, like, when you really look at just TKO in general, whenever he had somebody that he cared about, like he had love for them, which you and Mark obviously fell into that category. Yeah. If he were going to fight you real hard, what he would do is he would bring that person in to fight somebody else. And Spencer Fisher was supposed to fight Fabio Holanda at TKO 22, and that fight got canceled because Spencer got the call to the UFC and he fought Thiago Alves. Like, it was like within 2 weeks. Yeah. I have a feeling that he was bringing Spencer Fisher in for you and Spencer to do battle in TKO.
That would have been interesting. Funny how it all works out, eh?
Did they ever mention that to you?
He never did, but I mean, I still run. He got TKO back up and running for a little bit, and I went and had dinner with him after the last one. I'm surprised he never brought that up. I should ask him. I'll ask him about it. I'm going to text him after this is over and find out if that was what he had in the.
It appears
that's what he was cooking up,
because that's what he would do. And like, if you look at, like, here's a Canadian versus American famous fight: Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward. Arturo Gatti from Quebec. Later moved to New Jersey to train. But, like, that largely in part is the Gotti Ward of the 155-pound division, you and Spencer Fisher. Like, that was a special fight.
I appreciate that. That's a good compliment, because that was a hell of a trilogy, that Gotti Ward trilogy. That's my favorite trilogy of all time in boxing, for sure.
Mine too, for sure. I bring it up all the time.
I still remember I was just watching, was it Friday Night Fights, when the first one, and I just happened to be flipping through the channels and just like stumbling and like just watching that, just like, what the fuck is going on here?
Man, have you? I'm sure you've seen the movie The Fighter, have you not?
Yeah.
I watched that the other day, and man, that thing always gets me emotional. I was thinking about that because that's a good movie, but man, those fights were. I mean, I don't care. I was talking about Floyd Mayweather. I'd watch those two guys fight, you know, if I could every day. I don't care if you're the best in the world. I want to see those guys fight.
Yeah.
They weren't the best in the world at the time. They were the best guys.
Not always about the best. Sometimes it's about the best matchup, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm the sharp promoter that did a show on the same day as Gotti Ward won in Lowell, Massachusetts.
I hated both people who paid when they liked the show.
It was George Rivera's mom, and I think that's about it.
So, you know, Sam, your first fight with the UFC is UFC 58. And it was in 2006, largely, I think he won Fight of the Year that year. So the event was called the Canadian Invasion. There's 7 fighters from Canada on the card here in the United States. And that's never been done. Like, you've got like 8, 9, 10 Brazilians on a card, but it's always in Brazil. Or 8, 9, 10 Canadians on a card, and that's in Canada. But this was in Vegas. Yeah. So, Miguel and I and Chris, we always kind of, you know, pregame in regards to how interviews are going to go. This is a huge step up for you. Like, this is like, you're now serious in regards to fighting. Before, you were just doing it for the fun, the grind, the relationship with Tompkins. And now things get serious.
Yeah. I mean, huge step up. And you could almost argue that it was a little premature. I mean, I was 21 years old. I was a fucking kid. I was like 9-1-1, I think, going into that fight.
Yes.
So I was fairly inexperienced, but they had this idea to do the Canada versus US thing. So they needed to fill the card. So there's no question that I was the number one lightweight in the country. I think I defended it 3 or 4 times already at that point, or 3 times at least. But yeah, I mean, it was a big jump. I was supposed to fight Kenny Florian that night.
And he hurt his back.
He hurt his back packing his suitcase, about to get on to go to the airplane, to get on the airplane. That's the story we got. Like, he was like twisted, throwing something into a suitcase and blew his back out.
Okay. So here we go. Like, you know, Chris, and I think you can kind of relate to this. So he's fighting the regional Canada scene. Then he comes to the UFC, and like we all agree, that's a big step up. But then you walk into the locker room, and there's 7 Canadian fighters that are on the card, and they're cornermen. So you're looking at 30 people that you know.
That's got to help.
It did. Yeah.
How big of an advantage was that for you?
Oh, it was great, man. It was like the vibe in the locker room was real cool, because it was like I was saying, like, these are guys that we had these rivalries with, but we knew for years, and we knew through a lot of, like, you know, crazy, you know, and even those rivalries, when a push came to shove, we'd all be at the same after parties, having drinks together, having a good time. I remember getting trapped in a elevator in Victoriaville with Steve Claveau and fucking Patrick Cote, and like, we all had these crazy stories that we had shared over the years. So it was a very cool experience, like talking to George before the fight, before he fought BJ that night. And, you know, yeah, it made me feel a lot more at home. Like, if you watch that fight, you know, for a first time fighter, and I think they comment on it in the commentary, is like, this guy's not fighting like a first guy under the, like, yeah. I wasn't shell shocked in my first UFC fight. I went out there and just did what I had always done. And I think probably having that locker room full of familiar faces was a big reason for that.
I mean, a lot of times they talk about the UFC jitters, and people, they get so mentally, you know, this is what I've been looking for so long. They get there and it's not the same. They freeze up. But I think that you're probably right. Having everything being common and normal and just relax, you probably helped out quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you seen it with, like, guys that you've come up with or guys that you brought there, and it's like, you know, who was that guy? Who was that guy?
You sucked tonight, man. You know?
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck was that? You didn't pull the trigger. And that's usually what it is, right? Usually it's guy goes in there, and freezes up, and they're just too tentative, right? For me and Spencer, we're not. Neither one of us was tentative that night.
Let's get a little micro on this fight. Like we get like super nerdy. I mean, we're talking about your TKO. I'm from Chicago. Chris is Indianapolis. Miguel's living in Costa Rica. So like we're going pretty deep on this. So
and Spencer's on the schedule for next week. Just
yes.
Oh, is he good? Yeah. Good. I saw you guys. I saw some the stuff you had Monty on talking about him, and hope I'll be tuning in to watch Spencer. I know he's doing okay. Like, I mean,
good.
We'll touch on that if you guys want to talk about that.
For sure. But Mike,
dude, absolutely. So all right, Kenny Florian gets hurt, putting his luggage away or getting his luggage ready. What other names are being thrown at you other than Spencer Fisher?
Well, it was so I was already in Vegas when this happened. When I found out, it was like the day we got there. I was on the flight to Vegas, thinking I was fighting Kenny Florian. I get there, and I can't remember if it was the day we got there, or the second day. It must have been the day we got there because Kenny would have been flying in the same day. So we get in there, say we got bad news. Florian's out. So we're calling. They were scrambling. On the Tuesday prior to the fight, trying to figure out who they were going to get.
Yeah, who's licensed?
And the first person that was willing to agree to it was Spencer. And him and I we went out to, when I was staying with Jeff in Chicago, we drove out to what was it, Tri-Cities there. We drove out to Miltage and sat in on one of those. We sat in on one of those fucking sparring sessions that you guys have been brought up a few times on the show, I think too. the Miltage, bloodbath. So I got a round or two in with Spencer, and I'm like, all right, and I remember, I'm 21 years old. I'm a young kid here. I don't know what's going on. And they tell me, and Joe Silva tells me, I mean, we got you Spencer Fisher. You don't have to take the fight if you don't want. We'll understand. So I'm like, can I go talk to Shawn out in the hallway? And
so they approached you direct?
Yeah. Well, no, Shawn was with me. No, Shawn and I went down to the UFC office that they had set up in Mandalay Bay there. And he's like, this is your option. It's either take this fight with Spencer or you're off the card. And I said, I looked at Shawn and was like, this is the dream here. We're here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but I knew who Spencer was. I sparred with him and I watched him. I knew. I was like, this is a different fight than the only thing he had in common with Kenny is they're both lefties. So at least I had that going. But I said, Shawn, what do we do here? And he goes, well, when they said you don't have to take this fight, what they mean is if you don't take this fight, you'll never fight in the UFC again. I said, well, I guess the decision's made. Let's fucking do this. So we walked back in the room. We said, all right, let's fucking do this. And then next thing you know, Spencer's rolling into town and we made it happen. So
I was going to ask you that. Was he flown in or was he already there? Because Franklin was at the top of the card. That's another Monty guy.
Well, yeah, but Franklin was cornered by George
Gurgel.
Yeah. George Gurgel and Kerry Shaw cornered him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they flew him out that day. Like it was like, all right, take the fight, get your shit together. They flew him out. I think he was there by the next day.
He's 20 pounds overweight.
20 pounds overweight. Yeah.
Monty has his fans and Monty has his detractors maybe, but here is a time that he saved the day and saved this kid, from a dead 100%. Trip on the week of the fight. So you can't knock that.
Were you managed by Monty at this time?
Myself? No, I didn't really. I mean, for that fight, it's just kind of nothing was ever written and nothing was ever inked. But Stephane was the one who kind of put that whole show together. The whole because he had the whole one side of the card was all TKO guys, right? So Stephane kind of put in the work, but Shawn was still my manager at that point. I think I ended up getting an actual manager after that fight.
Yeah, who'd you give percentages too from your fee? Shawn and Stephane, or just Stephane, or how'd that go?
I always gave Shawn a percentage for coaching fees, but fuck, it was only a couple $100, man. What we got paid for that?
Yeah,
we got 2 and 2 for that fight.
2 and 2, of course.
Standard. 2 and 2, first time.
So, but Stephane's the kind of guy who's not going to be shy about grabbing his $400 if that was the case.
I'm pretty sure I gave him his $400. Yeah, okay. I think I gave him his $400. Yeah.
All right, that's
now
business.
Okay, yeah. So when you walked out of the ring, was the text from Stephane already waiting for you that you owed him $400?
You got my money.
Or did he wait till you got home?
It was probably. I probably took it out of what he owed me.
Were you on a Stephane Patry payment plan at any time?
What's that?
Were you ever on the payment plan with Stephane?
You know what? He had to keep. Hominick was his golden boy, and then I started kind of following in that footsteps. So he paid us. I think there was a couple times where we had to wait a few weeks, but he kept us happy.
You weren't like fighting on TKO 22, and he's like, I got another check for you for TKO 19. It wasn't.
Yeah. I've heard all the stories, man. I heard. Well, I bet. Did you guys ask Monty about him? Because those guys got it the worst. I think he tried to put together that one really big show that's when those guys were. That's when he had Jens fight Dwayne, and I think. He had a whole bunch of Monty's guys on that. He had anyways, and I think they're still waiting on the checks.
Well, Sam, I don't want to give you bad news, but I'm going to let the other guys say it to you. So Chris and Miguel, he wins a split decision over Spencer Fisher in Las Vegas. Huge win, entry to the UFC. Cecil Peoples scored at 29-28. For Sam. Do you guys think maybe Spencer may have won that fight just based on that fact alone?
No, he usually is the counter indicator of who really won. You're right there. Yeah. Not always.
Hey, you know what? I've had a lot of split decision wins and losses. Hey, it's the game, right? It was a close fight. It's a close fight. I've watched that fight many times, and you could make the argument that Spencer won that one.
I thought you won.
It's a coin toss, man. What are you gonna? You know what I mean? How do you judge it?
It's a coin toss. I think the second one, hands down, Spencer beat me up that night. And what we should do is watch them all back to back all 9 rounds.
Score all 9 rounds.
It's a 9-round fight.
Score it that way.
Yeah, I think that was the most surprising thing was Cecil People scored it right. I had to rewind it, listen to the scores again. I listened to the scores 3 times. Wait a minute.
This can't be right.
There's no way.
That's funny.
No, but that's good. Cecil Peoples has been around. That's probably what they told him. That he's been around, though. He's been around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your second fight, your rematch with Spencer, was that okay? So the first fight, Spencer takes it last minute against yourself. Did you take the second fight last minute with Spencer?
No, because they had it set up as the main event for that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on Spike TV Fight Night in Hollywood, Florida.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was a good time. It was. I don't know. I thought I maybe just being young and naive. I thought it was going to be the same fight. He made more adjustments than I did. He came in, and Spencer Fisher, and that was Spencer in his prime. Really, I think that was still a little before my prime. I think Spencer was right kind of in the meat of his prime. He came in good shape. He wanted that one back bad, and we went. Yeah, that was a fucking battle.
If you really look at his training camp, it coincided with Jens Pulver and BJ Penn fighting. And Pulver and Fisher were, big time sparring partners. Yeah. So you knew he was coming in shape because he had a guy in the gym just constantly pushing him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. But the one thing I remember from that fight is coming back to the corner, and I was, going back in hindsight. And one thing about me is I could never tell if I was winning or losing during the fight, unless it was turning into a blowout. I was always like, did I win that round? But I remember coming back to the corner and like Shawn's like, how do you feel? And I was like, I'm having a great fucking time. Like that was one of those fights where we were eating punches, trading punches. And I just remember that being one of the most fun fights I ever had.
Now for the first one, you made 4,000. How much did you get for the second one?
Well, shit.
Six. He got up 2,000.
No. Yeah. So I went up to 6. Yeah. Cause there were in between that one, I lost that fight to Kenny Florian. Then I went and fought another fight in TKO and to defend the title. And then I came back but yeah, I would have made 6 and 6, but that was one of the first fight of the night bonuses they gave away.
Okay. Really? How much was that worth?
15 G's.
Okay. Because they start going up and up. I remember the first one I was around was like at 20,000. I was like, oh my God, what 20,000? But then they started really going up.
Yeah. And that was remember back in the day, Chris, when it was based on the projected kind of earnings of the show.
Yeah.
Remember, it wasn't just 50 grand flat every time. It was like if you were fighting on a Spike TV fight night, they were giving. Yeah, 50.
You didn't get. That stuff because like they're not going to make any money. I want to fight on the pay-per-views. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm sorry. One of the things that happens now though is that the fighters get real excited. I'm going for the bonus. I'm going to knock them out and stuff like that. Yeah. Did you even know that was coming at that point? That's at the point where that's a surprise, no?
I mean, at that stage, it wasn't really like they didn't talk about the bonuses before. It was like they just started giving them away. Actually, the first time Spencer and I fought, I got a check from Dana and a typed out letter that was signed by Dana saying thanks for putting it all out there and with a check for $500. So that was my first. Are
you kidding?
So you made $10,500 to fight him twice.
$500 US, man. I'm from Canada. That's like fucking $600 Canadian.
Man, you could have paid 2 bills instead of just one.
So when we talk to Monty at this point, he's telling us that like the UFC and him had a giant wedge in between themselves. They were just trying to drive a wedge between Monty and his fighters. For some reason, they didn't get along. And Monty would say that like Dana would be taking Spencer and Matt Hughes out to dinner with their families and stuff like that and inviting them to his house. Did you get on the Dana White dinner plan at all during this? Because he really had a lot of love for those two.
No, I didn't. But I mean, I was with Shawn and that was the one constant. Like Monty was, Monty was there from start to finish in those guys' careers, and he had their best interests in mind, right? He was, I was kind of going. I went through a couple different managers in those days, and but Monty was looking out for his guys, which went against what some of the plans that Dana and the Fertittas might have had, right? Like they're trying to make as much money as they can. They're not really. I think. The illusion that it's all it's this big happy family that they want to take, they're really looking out for the fighter's best interest. I think that illusion's, that's gone. But at that time, they were still trying to sell that story that,
it's true.
They were taking care of us and this was a family. And once you're part of the Zuffa family, the UFC family. But so you guys know Monty, he doesn't say something he doesn't mean, and he mean what he says. Like he doesn't pull punches either. He's going to tell you the way it is, and they didn't like that. So I can see why they would. And he was controlling most of their biggest stars.
A lot of the champs, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
one thing I think we can even get Cecil Peoples to agree that $10,500 is not enough to fight Spencer Fisher twice.
So
that 500 got to help them.
No, but second time. But the second time, I remember getting that 15 G's. I think at the end of that fight was because I was main event for that one, so I got some sponsorship money. I got a little bit of, so I think I got I think I ended up walking away with like $27,000. You know, I was 22 years old by that time, and it was like, oh shit. And I was like fanning out money, and like, you know, I thought I was the fucking man at that time.
I'm going to get my own place.
Yeah.
All right. So like, it's so interesting. Like if you like, look how it gets broken down. Like, so Spencer Fisher is much more relaxed in that second fight. And he's bleeding profusely over his right eye. But like when he's walking into the cage, it looks like he's already got a cut that he's super glued shut. And you just kind of opened it up.
It wouldn't surprise me, man. Like you guys were, I saw what you guys talking about on one of the show with Monty, those sparring sessions, man. Like those guys were mean as fuck. And that's one of the things that, you know, we were never really like that. I always wore my headgear. I always, you know, whether or not it does much good, but we weren't trying to knock each other out. We liked each other. Those guys were fucking dicks.
I mean, you also got to look at, like, they're even more old school than you guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was just a school of hard knocks. That's just how people. Yeah, that's how they did it a lot of times back in those days, especially new guys coming into the gym. I mean, they would have tear their head off, man. I mean,
fuck yeah.
We didn't train like that either very much, but I mean, yeah, there was a lot of that with the old school people. That's just how it was.
That's how it was.
Now, Monty was talking a little bit about the attrition that Spencer went through, and he said that you shared some of that. Like, how was the recovery from those fights?
I mean, it was a long one. Like those were, you know. But yeah, I came home. I looked like E.T. I had two big, like my eyes were swollen shut. I had to wear. I looked like one of those douchey guys wearing sunglasses out at the bar for the next 2 weeks. I was like, you know. And then I remember coming home from that one and being at one of the bars in London here, and some guy's like, "Who's this fucking guy think he is? Tom Cruise in Risky Business?" And I pulled up my shades, and he was like, "Okay, cool, never mind. Like, it's all good."
So you had mentioned Kenny Florian. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just talking about the recovery for that. Yeah, it was those ones were always like I didn't even set foot in the gym for 2 weeks after, just like, and then, you know, it was always that one. Luckily, was only in Florida, but like some of those long flights home, like I threw a lot of kicks in fights. I'd be kicking elbows, and you get on a flight, and your feet swell up, and you get those like cankles. And, yeah, it was miserable, man. Like those, yeah, I was banged up. I have to, you know, yeah, it was that. Those ones took a lot out of me for sure.
Did you pee blood like Spencer did?
I never peed blood. I hunted for the body a lot more than Spencer did, though.
He's a headhunter.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so you mentioned Kenny Florian. We already kind of touched on it, that you lost to rear naked choke. And, you know, had that been your UFC entrance, it probably would have taken you about 4 or 5 more fights to get back there.
Yeah. That's an interesting, like, if I would have gone in and my first fight would have gone the way that fight with Florian did. The one thing, though, is I became really good friends with Mark Delagrati, who was Kenny's trainer at the time. And he, I don't know if he was just blowing smoke up my ass, but he was like, he told Kenny when they were sitting at home watching it because they didn't end up coming. But he's like, you're lucky you're lucky you threw your back out. Because I don't know if they didn't have the right game plan, but when he saw that, I think they made some adjustments to the way they planned to come in and fight me. And you know, so you could argue that maybe Kenny Florian might not have got that title shot against Sean Shirk so quick if he would have fought me on that first, if he hadn't thrown his back out and got hurt, you know?
Good for you.
So
he's the optimist.
That's the way I like to look at it.
No, perfect. That's all good. Correct Mike when he's wrong.
Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So after the Florian fight, is the UFC just signing you to 1-fight deals, or did you get cut after that bout?
No, like I had mentioned, Stephane was the one who put us in that, got us in our foot in the door. So I think he had them write something into the contract that we could still go back and fight in TKO. So after I took the first loss to Kenny, I went back and I fought
Jay Estrada.
Was it Jay? Yeah, you're right, Jay Estrada. The
TKO 27.
Yeah.
So
I fought that. Yeah, I fought
we
the rematch to Jay Estrada, got that win, and then they brought me back for the fight with Spencer.
So this is the interesting part, like of Stephane, which is why I've got a lot of respect for him. So when they're talking with Estrada about the rematch with you, which is a big fight because you definitely want it. Like that's the one fight you want back. And it's not Joey Clark, it's Estrada because it's your first fight.
Yeah.
And they offer him Horodecki a few times, and Jay always accepted. But, you know, I don't think Horodecki was right yet because he was like 18 years old or maybe 17. And
let me think. I would have been 22, so he would have been – I think we were still waiting for him to turn 18 so we could turn him pro.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just it would make sense that wasn't the first fight Shawn would have wanted him to like get his, you know, because I mean I think he started his pro career after 18 in TKO, and it was like let's not have him fight somebody that nobody in the crowd knows who he is. Let's have him beat somebody that the TKO fans already knew. So yeah, you're probably right about that.
Yeah, they have him fight Samuel Goulet, who he goes through fairly easily. And then they rematch with yourself. And I know Jay got a couple takedowns in that first round, worked it, and then he called me up after that bout, and he's like, man, the craziest thing just happened. He's like, something I never expected. I'm like, what? He's like, he hit an armbar on me, and he got it. And I'm like, what?
Still my one submission
of my career.
That's my only submission. That's my only submission of my 30-something fight career.
Nice. Yeah, he's like, you got me an armbar. I go, was it good? He's like, I never saw it coming. He's like, it was picture perfect.
He went, yeah, he was in my guard, and somehow I kind of hooked his arm and ended up reversing the mount. And then started to rain down some punches, and he just kind of didn't. He was obviously unprepared for it because he put his arm straight out. So I just grabbed it, and then by the time he tried to arch out of it, I just went belly down with it and finished it belly down. So yeah, that's
your only submission.
My only submission.
Did you get submission of the night? Oh, but that's not UFC. TKO. Okay, yeah. So no bonuses from Stephane, huh?
No.
He probably could have beat the $500 bonus.
No, he put out a lot of fighters. I don't mean to always be negative about Stephane. He put out a lot of fighters that are great, including yourself. So,
yeah. So you did your training camp in California for this bout. This is when Shawn was kind of spreading out.
That was with we were with Team Quest there in Temecula.
In California? Okay.
In Temecula, California, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With Dan.
So you were in California. Was it how big of a difference was this training camp as compared to the ones in the past?
I mean, that was the first time being on the road. So I mean, we were staying with Dan Henderson at his ranch. So I mean, nuts. It was awesome. I mean, we're riding horses with Dan Henderson, and in between training sessions, we're barbecuing. Dan's like the most chill. Like Dan's a cowboy. He's like he's like the new modern age Marlboro man. He's like he's so fucking cool, man. So I was just in awe. I remember my first round sparring with Dan. And it was like Dan was one of those guys, and Dan was one of those guys like Vanderlei was like this too when I sparred with him. It was like they spar exactly how they fight. Like they are just winging punches. And I remember just being like probably big smile on my face. And I'm like, I'm sparring with fucking Dan Henderson right now. He's just throwing bombs at me. I'm getting tagged, beat up. So it was different in that sense. Also, just being in California that was my first time in California. So it's like, it's like, shit, what are we going to eat? And then they got like Whole Foods and stuff like that. And it's like, I can get exactly what I need here for like, so it was a big culture shock for me to be in California and training with Dan Henderson. And, but at that time it wasn't like in Extreme Couture where there was like Dan was the big name there. there was some guys that were good up and comers. There was like Sokoju, remember Terry Remo? Sokoju, he was there. So, and then he had some good lightweights, some good up and coming guys.
Did you get to meet Robert Fallis? Robert Fallis?
This was in California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think that's one of their Oregon coaches. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's one of the Oregon guys. Yeah. So, I mean, and Shawn was running the show. So it was still had the same vibe as like any other camps I had, because Shawn was still overseeing the whole, like he was overseeing Dan's fight. Dan was getting ready to fight Vanderlei in that one Pride event they did at in Vegas.
In Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool. We got to, we had a good camp. Dan had a busted, his right hand was all messed up. So Shawn was working a lot of left hooks with them and stuff like that. And he ended up knocking out Vanderlei with that left hook. So, I mean, that was a cool experience. Very fun. That's when, and I remember I had Ronnie Yaya to train with. So that probably helped with that. My one submission is, training with a guy like that. So it was cool. And it was more of that like early stage where we're branching off and we're starting to go down these different paths where we're broadening our horizons and becoming more complete fighters. And like when you're first on the road for a whole training camp, it's really, you're forced to kind of take a next
different routine.
You're nervous in every training session. You're never comfortable. So, I mean, I think it forces you to push yourself a little harder, make a good impression on a new group of guys, all that stuff. So I think it was a benefit for me for sure.
So from there, you fight Fabio Holanda, who is the Brazilian top team head coach in Canada. And, man, he had a lot to say about you prior to that bout.
They always did.
Yeah.
I spoke with him after that, and he thought I don't think he didn't really train. I think his training camp consisted of him getting down to 155. And he said that in his mind, he was going to come out and submit you in one round. And that was that. That was the going to be the whole fight. So he didn't really work on conditioning. He didn't really he just planned on, but one thing about me is I was really good in a scramble. I had really loose elbows and shoulders, and he was a Kimura guy. So, he jumped on a Kimura. I flipped and somersaulted my way out of it, rolled out of it, and then started defending a few takedowns, wore him down, and it did not take long to have his gas tank empty. So I went back to my old system of my Homer Simpson game plan, knocking his ass out. And then he gave up, and he didn't even answer the bell after the second round. It was a fight scheduled for 5 rounds, and he didn't make it 2. Or he made it. He finished 2, and then
quit on the stool.
Quit on the stool. Yeah.
I don't think you landed a single significant strike, because you were always just fighting off the submissions, and he was done.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think. No, he wasn't hurt. He
wasn't hurt.
He was exhausted. He was exhausted, and he was like, he couldn't even hold his hands up anymore. And he's like, well, if I couldn't submit him in the first 2 rounds, I'm not going to get him now. Yeah. And I'm still, me, I'm still. We didn't sit on Shawn never let us sit on a stool. So the whole time he's sitting there like I'm ready to puke because he's so exhausted. I'm standing there bouncing with my hands up while Shawn's talking to me, staring him down. And then I just remember him like shaking his head and then I was like, what the fuck happened? Like, that was the first time that had ever happened. Somebody had refused to answer the bell for one of my fights. So
well, he quit from exhaustion, but he had you mounted several times in that fight.
Oh yeah, he had me in trouble a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. What's kind of crazy to me is, all right, you have bad luck against Kenny Florian, okay? And it appears that you got exposed a little bit, like your ground game. It showed that you had some holes in it still, that you were still trying to.
If you go back and watch that Kenny Florian fight, I mean, I was a lot harder to – I think what went wrong is Kenny did hit me with he hit me with a big overhand to set up the takedown. And he did I was on Queer Street a little bit. So, like, I remember getting caught in that choke, and it was like one of those ones where I don't think I normally would have got caught in that choke if it was just takedown, immediately go to my back. I was a little bit out of it, and he was able to get that in. So yeah, if you go back and watch that again, watch the shot that he hit me with on the way in for the takedown.
So that fight was, because I remember when that took place, it was the country's best striker against the country's best grappler. Let's see what happens. And man, he didn't have a good showing. Did you guys kind of make amends after that, or was it is what it is?
Nah, it was what it was. I don't know what I never really liked Kenny Florian. I don't know. He's like, I mean, it's, if you're the one who wins the fight, I think it's up to you to kind of go out, like say, hey man, you know, it's all good. And I would have been happy to shake his hand after. I don't know. It's just, and nothing that and I shouldn't say that. He never did anything wrong to me. He just like, it's just an air about him, something about him that I don't know. I just thought, you know, and I'm not one to say that about most people. For the most part, I was looking for if I saw my opponent, I was buying him a beer. I was trying to shoot the shit, but I don't know. Kenny him and I never had that.
Mike, is that even who you were talking about? Were you talking about the other guy there?
I was, but I'll take that Kenny Florian. That's going to make a nice little clip, Chris.
Who were you talking about? Jay?
I was talking about Hollanda. But hey, Chris, we got a clip out of that. Oh, no. That's going to be on our Instagram page.
No. Oh, that's, yeah. Me and Kenny, you're going to start the beef back up? Whatever. Cut it however you want. He never reached out to me. Like, what the fuck, man? You got the best of me. Credit where credit's due. I lost that fight fair and square. Guy never made any kind of effort.
Yeah, it's a classic.
And he didn't have a reputation. Didn't have a reputation as being a stand-up guy or a super nice guy. He had a reputation as being a kind of a dick. So it was like, well, maybe he's just a dick. So I don't give a fuck.
Hey, it is what it is. Hey. But what about Hollanda? Did you guys ever kind of?
Yeah, I mean, we had the years later, because he's still, Patrick Cote and I are still real tight. We keep in touch. He's Patrick's trainer. And Fabio did produce a lot of great, or did corner and coach a lot of great fighters. And, I'm not that kind of guy that's going to hold a grudge against somebody I beat. There's no point in that. Even I don't hold a grudge against people I lost to. There's only two people I don't, and Kenny's not even so bad. The only other person I don't like that I fought is another kid. What's his name? John McDessie. That guy just put salt in the wound. Okay, you got the best of me. You threw a jab at me for 3 rounds and won a decision. Good, fine, you won. But then he went and did an interview after where he said, I sent Horodecki and Malcolm Gordon to go to TriStar to spy on him. It was like, no, my coach just fucking died. I went to Boston to go train with Delagrati, and those guys, for us, the hobby, offered us a place to train. So I really don't. You can put that on the Instagram. I really don't like John McDessie. Fuck that guy.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Chris, that's 2. We got 2 out of it for sure.
Hey, Sam, I'm not responsible for how they edit shit. I'm just here. Man. I don't do editing. That's on these guys.
Like, yeah, it's going back to what I was saying. It's like, don't, you won the fight. Don't kick me while I'm down and say and spread shit that I was, which is false, by the way. I never heard one, like, I didn't know he was training there. I didn't know he was going to be there at the same time. I didn't, he was, or McDessie was a gym jumper. He could have been at any gym. I didn't know that. He's trained at every gym from here to in North America. So, anyways,
it is what it is. All right. So sometimes Stephane, like when you look at his matchmaking, and we're all guilty of this. Miguel, you as well, me certainly. You'll see how a fight turns out, and then you'll try to kind of mimic it, hoping to kind of get that same result. And at TKO 30, Stephane pushed up against Martin Grandmont, who's another kickboxer type.
Yeah,
that wasn't an easy fight either. Like it wasn't
an easy round. Yeah, it wasn't an easy round. One round, but he was. You know what? I had problems with long, rangy fighters. He was a good kickboxer. I fought him and beat him in a decision in amateur kickboxing, actually. Before that. So, but Stephane, you know, I think Stephane knew that I was kind of not going to be his poster boy anymore, and I was kind of moving on to the next level, and he wanted, or he knew it was his time with me was almost done, so he wanted that Martin Grandmont to beat me bad. He was the challenger, and he had this whole. Did you see the production that they had for him? They had guys rappelling down from the ceiling and like all this crazy shit going on. And it was like, this guy's the challenger. Why is this guy getting all this like, this big high end production for? And they just walked me out, played my song like any other fight. And he was giving me a hard time with his range and his straight punches, and then but he was also expecting nothing but a stand up fight because that's all I had ever really done. So Shawn called for a takedown. So I shot in, he stuffed a takedown. But now I got him thinking about takedown attempts. So the next one, he goes fake the shot overhand. So I just kind of did a little pump fake, like I was going to shoot for another double, and just wing the biggest overhand I've ever thrown in my life. I've never hit somebody so hard in my entire life. Like I threw a Hail Mary from my ankle and just windmilled it and just hit him right on the button. And he just did one of those awkward fold, like, you know, when the guy like folds up like a lawn chair, like when Crow Cobb got knocked out by Gonzaga. His leg went all underneath him and all weird. And that was, and then, that was, and then I went in for the kill on that one too. I tried, Yves Levine saved that guy from permanent damage because I still wanted more because he had been tagging me that whole round. So I went in and tried to like hammer fist his head through the mat, but Yves Levine tackled me before he landed it. Yeah.
Well, I think like at this point, like the surprising thing is, one, you've got a really good name. You know, that's obviously not the surprise, but the surprising thing for me is you're getting everybody's best fight. So sometimes, like you had mentioned, in the UFC, the first fight, UFC jitters, there's a little hesitation there. Every guy that TKO is throwing at you, for some reason, just doesn't have that with you. Like, they're looking at you as, oh, I beat a guy that I know I can beat, and then I get my UFC contract.
Yeah, that's the
type of attitude that you were dealing with.
That's for sure. I was everyone's in Canada's ticket into the UFC at that point. Mm-hmm. I had that fight with Spencer, or I guess at this point, 2 fights with Spencer that were both, you know, got a lot of like that. The second one, Fight TV one, it had like 1.5 million views. Like, it was a big. So I had built a little bit of a name for myself. So I was everyone's stepping stone into the UFC, but didn't work out that way for him.
Yeah. Not easy fights though. You know, they certainly weren't easy fights.
Yeah.
So Rich Clemente, UFC 83, Matt Serra versus GSP 2. Yeah. Or George St. Pierre gets his belt back. Probably doesn't really fight the same after the first GSP fight. You're 11-0 in Canada. Every Canadian fighter on the card has won their bout up until this time, and you lose a split decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was. But it seems like you've been doing your homework before this podcast. So did you watch that recently?
I'm like OCD. I'm mentally ill. Yes.
That's one of the ones I really think you could. I thought I won it. Even when I go back and watch it, I think I won it. But
I think the issue is that first round where Clemente had you mounted for so long. And
hang on 1 second, guys. Hang on. My wife's water just broke. This might be a false alarm, but my wife's. I forgot to mention that my wife's 8 months pregnant.
What? Chris, this is another clip for Instagram.
Yeah,
another clip.
Be a good one for the Instagram.
You gotta have priorities.
Take your camera with you.
You'll have the kids.
All right. Can we pause this for a second?
Go look at. If you need to take care
Chris, you got some medical training, right?
I'm an EMT.
We're gonna talk you through it.
Can you
Don't
talk
yeah.
me how to deliver the baby? That would be great for the
You had 1 year paramedic
podcast
school.
if I deliver, we deliver the
Sam,
baby.
Sam, you need towels and hot water. Go boil water.
All right. Let me just make sure.
Go ahead, do your
go.
thing.
Do your thing, man. We'll yeah.
This is where we kill time.
Yeah.
Chris, a couple things.
You should have took the camera. We needed this. This is. I mean,
we've been doing these rest in pieces for the site as well. You know, and we did one for Kimbo, and Mike Brown said something nice about him that we put at the end of it. And
Okay.
stuff. What I want you to do, like maybe next week or one of the days that we record, is put together like a 2-minute story about Tony Ross that I could add to the end of his.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's something I want to do with everybody that we're putting up there. And then we got another interview where you're going to be second in the old school ratings here.
Who we got?
You remember Bob Shriver?
I remember
Dirty
the name.
Bob.
All right, this guy, he fought Vanderlei
Somebody
Silva.
in Pride 7 after the bell.
What?
He axe kicked after the bell somebody in Pride. He fought Vanderlei Silva. He fought Gilbert Ivel 3 times.
Igor
Okay.
Bocek.
I remember the name. I couldn't remember. Okay, yeah, yeah.
He's got most of his fights between 95 and 98.
Oh man, Jesus.
All right, him lined up.
I'm back.
No, baby. Are you just told to hold it? Hey,
So, you
cross the
know,
legs until for a couple hours, son.
we don't know if she just pee the bed a little bit, or is there like, I don't know, but she's not having contractions. There's
Okay.
no like.
Okay.
I think we're okay.
Well,
we got
tape measure.
We can finish.
Miguel does that all the time. Don't worry
She's
about it.
gonna call her OB right now, and so yeah.
All right.
Hey, you need to go, brother. Trust me.
You told her you're doing an interview, right? I mean, you let her know that, right?
Yeah. Well, I told her to
Honey!
come downstairs. I told her to come downstairs, and we'll do the delivery live on the Lights Out.
And we need the hits.
That'll get
We
some hits. I mean,
Right?
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
might not be the target audience that you're looking for, but
no, that's awesome though. That you're gonna be a dad. That's cool because
Second time.
Yeah. appreciate it.
it's been
Is it girl or boy?
I got a daughter, and this will be I got a daughter, and this is going to be my first boy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Chris is a
You're
nice
gonna
name
be-
if you don't have a name picked out.
You're going to realize that girls are so much smarter than boys.
Oh,
and
you
it's
know what? This
not
is,
even comparable.
I got to retract my statement. This is my first boy.
There you
go.
She opened the door and let him back down here.
Yeah. Hey, so do you want to ask about concussions, Mike? Are we there yet?
Yeah, let's do that because you know what, Sam? I'm going to be honest with you. We're having a real good flow here. I'd like to get you back for a part 2. So if you wouldn't mind us opening it up to like other discussion.
Of course, yeah.
All right, CTE. How has your experience like with, the trauma and concussions that you suffered up until this point?
Well, so this is I figured you guys would touch on this issue just with the whole Spencer thing and I got out of the UFC at 31 because I'm terrified of it. I had a cast iron job my whole fight career, and then I got clipped by KJ Nunes with a shot I didn't see coming, and I went down. I thought, hey, I wasn't, I was still trying to fight. I choked the referee in that one. I was still I wasn't out like starched, but I was definitely altered state of consciousness, right? So, and then it happened to me again against Ross Pearson, and then again against a guy who's not even Frankie Perez, who's not even really known as a knockout artist, right? So, I mean, that was the reason. After that third time it happened, I was like, "Whoa, something's not the same. I'm getting out of here before anything gets. I'm not going to keep trying to hold on for a $35,000 losing purse. That's what I was making at that point. It's not worth the rest of my life. And if you ask me if I think I have any symptoms, I think I do. I don't think they're on the level of some people, but I mean, and
give us an example.
I noticed I have much harder time processing information than I used to. You know, if there's a lot of information coming at me and there's any kind of distraction, I really get overwhelmed, and I find myself getting frustrated very easily, which I don't remember having in the past. I don't know if that's CT. Maybe it's not CT. Maybe it is. But it makes me question it a lot. And I'll tell you, if the opportunity were to present itself for me to go to one that do help with, like, go get a study done, go get tests done, I would take it for peace of mind. But I definitely am a lot safer with my guys that I'm training than I was with myself because of my weariness of them, you know, living with issues for the rest of their life.
So let's talk about safety measures that you could put in place. Do you read at all? Like, not on your phone, I'm talking actual books.
Yeah. I'm in a little, I've been working on something for quite a while now. But like, yeah, if I'm on an airplane, I'll read. If there was a while where I was trying to read a book every month.
That's good.
You know,
okay.
But I'm not reading as regularly as I did, but yes, I do read.
Okay. What about psilocybin mushrooms, like microdosing?
I've tried it. I don't know how, like, I haven't done, I should do some more research on it because, I don't know how, like, do you have to do it for a long time? You
should do it every day. And it should be like,
you can't take a quarter all at once. You gotta
you're not doing like 5 grams.
You can't do the whole month's worth?
No.
You can't take, yeah.
Are we talking about preventative medicine
I tried
here?
a little bit of.
Yeah.
With that?
I was just going to say,
you're looking at like a stem or a cap every single day.
Yeah, the psilocybin, they give you usually about 100 milligrams of psilocybin, right? It's like, that's what the dose I tried taking. I tried taking like 100 milligram dose, but it was just kind of like a little sample pack.
And how was your experience?
I felt good. It wasn't like, you know, it's not enough to get you like tripping balls or anything like that. So it did kind of like, it made me feel like I was kind of living more in the moment and a little less stressed and anxious about other things. And I found it helped a little bit. I didn't think it was like, you know, this revelation where it's like now everything's, you know, great. But
all right. So here's the trick. Yeah, I mean, I've done a ton of research on this. So like psilocybin, you build a tolerance to. So it's like your first beer, you might have got buzzed, but you know, now if you have one beer, you're not going to be buzzed. So with microdosing, it's really important that you don't get that buzzed feeling. So you should do a real low dose, and it allows quadrants of your brain to communicate that normally they don't connect. So it's super like important, like for your brain and mental health, and you know, the plasticity.
It's building electrical pathways in your brain, basically.
Yes, and the plasticity becomes stronger. So another thing is lion's mane mushroom.
Mushrooms, yeah. I haven't tried that. My wife's got the lion's mane tea. Like
perfect.
Yeah, so maybe I'll get on that. But it's one of these issues that it's hard for me. Like there's guys like Spencer that are, you know, it's clear. There's no question about it. For me, it's like, am I just getting older? Am I getting, you know, I'm sure it didn't help. Do I have CT to the point where you guys have spent the last hour and a half, 2 hours talking to me. I can still hold a conversation. I can still organize my thoughts. I can still do all those things. I don't forget where I'm going when I'm driving places. I don't have serious symptoms like that, but do I think I might be a little better off had I not taken, you know, however many thousands of punches to the head? There's a good chance. All
right, so I kind of want to. I'll probably ask this question on part 2. You know, when we get there. But why did you fight KJ Noons at 170 pounds?
You know what? This is an interesting story because do you remember when Max Holloway pulled out of that? And this is a theory. I don't know if this is true, but you know, I'm no doctor. But he had a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, right? Like a mini stroke.
Oh, cutting weight. Yes.
Cutting weight for that fight.
It took him forever to return from that as well. It took him like 6-7 months to recover. Yes.
so I didn't think of it at the time. I just thought I was having a tough weight cut. But all the symptoms that he was talking about is exactly what I was going through. I was like, it felt like I had like 10 times gravity holding me down to the hotel room bed. Like I've never had that before a fight. I was just so weak and so tired. And then it was still it was like right about time to like start putting in like getting on the sweats, getting the plastics. And I was like 165-ish or 167. And we went down for a rules meeting or something like that. And Joe Silva wasn't there. It was Sean Shelby. Joe Silva was off in Australia at another event. And I talked to, and one of my cornermen was like, I was like, fuck, man, I wish I could just do this. We could just do this fight at 170. Like, he looks the same size as me. And one of my guys, Jesse Ronson, who fought in the UFC a couple times, it's like, why don't I just go ask him? So he goes over to KJ and goes, hey, what's your weight right now? And he goes, up at 167. He goes, Sam's the exact same. You guys want to just do this fight at 170 so you don't have to cut weight? And he was like, can we do that? And I was like, I don't know. And then, so they went over to Sean Shelby and they're like, hey, these guys want to just like say, fuck the weight, fuck the last 24 hours of cutting weight. They're both in shape. They're both the same weight. Can they just do it at 170? And he's like, I don't know. Let me call Joe Silva. And Joe Silva's in Australia. I think the show had just ended. And you know, Joe, he's just like a little cranky motherfucker sometimes. Like, I don't give a fuck. And he's just like, so we just kind of slipped it past the goalie. Like, hey, we're just going to do it at 170 and avoid the weight cut. So we were both kind of like, cool. Like, and then it was like, and then I got all these people started asking me like, well, is everyone going to start doing this? And like, it was going to open, like, it started
Pandora's
box of all this, like, all these weird questions.
That'd have been nice.
And then Joe was like, never again. Nobody's ever doing this again. So we kind of were the one it was the one fight where we slipped that past.
Do you think maybe that weight cut that KJ didn't go through may have helped him and may have hurt you?
I think it hurt me for sure. I think, maybe. Yeah, he's fought at higher weight classes before and I never had. So maybe a little bit. But
because you're not a big cut to 55. Like, it's a decent cut, but it's not a crazy cut.
But that was the turning point in my career where I couldn't quite fight the same. You know, I couldn't. My Homer Simpson style of fighting didn't work anymore because I was, you know, I couldn't take a punch the same way after that. And we'll never know unless they can. I don't know if they can still do an MRI or something like that and find evidence of that, but I'm pretty sure something was wrong before that fight happened.
Mm.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Well, I'm sure like you had some pretty hard sparring sessions up until this point. Where were some of your hardest done at?
Some of my hardest sparring sessions?
Yes, because you were kind of gym jumping at this time.
Well, I wasn't gym jumping. We were going back and forth between Extreme Couture and in Vegas and training back home. And we were myself and Hominick had kind of taken over running the original Team Tompkins. And then we opened it we did some hard sparring sessions. For a long time, I think the hardest sparring sessions we did were, there was a couple years where I remember I was talking about that group that we had at Extreme Couture when there was the 27 UFC Pride. And so in those days, we would have our sparring sessions were split into weight classes because we had so many guys. So we would have 6 or 7 lightweights and we'd get in the cage at Extreme Couture and it would be, you know, on any given day, it would be like me, Gray Maynard, Tyson Griffin, Mark Hominick, Chris Horodecki. There was a couple other like guys who were just knocking on the UFC's door that were really good. We'd have Mac Danzig. Like there was a killer group of 155ers, and we'd spar Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Everyone did 3 rounds of Shark Tank. So it was awful, man. It was awful. And looking back, it was the dumbest thing we could have done because you learn to just fight defensively the whole time. Like you're just trying to survive your 3 rounds. So the only offense you'd have is when you were beating up on whoever was in the middle. So really,
really, all you can learn then is, toughness and how to hold on. And, I mean, really, it's all you're learning is like mental toughness, 100%. Really, and how to be a tough ass fighter.
Yeah, that's all it did. But it was, I mean, and I'm not opposed to doing those kind of sessions for some of the guys who aren't, who need to build a little grit, but not 3 times a week for a whole fucking 8 week training camp. With
A-level athletes too coming in.
Yeah. And I mean, it'd be another thing if it was like, local. Chris, you spoke about when your camps were kind of geared around you, right? Because you were coming back home to work as a firefighter. So if you're the hammer and you're doing a Shark Tank with a bunch of nails, that's one thing. But when you're a hammer in a Shark Tank with a bunch of other hammers, that
has to be horrible, man. Like the poundings. I mean, like when I would start to lose, it wasn't bad. I could still hold my own, but I'm still getting beat by guys I should beat. When you're there with world champs, that would have been bad, man. I would not like that.
It was not fun. It was not.
The one thing is, the UFC is always trying to, get that fight of the night. You're always trying to get that fight of the night bonus, and they're trying to create that fight to make that happen. The one surprising fight that shocks me that you never had when I look at your record is Donald Cerrone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have gone that way had Shawn not passed what he did. Because the last fight, I like Donald a lot. We've always got along, but we also have that mutual like the first time I met him actually was, or like one of the first times we kind of actually met that wasn't just in passing was the UFC did one of those fighter conferences. Chris, did you ever go to one of those where they like told you to pay your taxes and start?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question about that in a minute, but go ahead. Yeah, apparently you just answered it for me. But go ahead.
When they gave us a coffee break, Donald walked right up to me, and I was grabbing a coffee out of the coffee machine, and he's like, "I really want to fight you." And I was like, what the fuck did this guy just say? And then and then he just sat down and started shooting the shit with me, like we were buddies. And I was like, oh, that's like a show of respect from a guy like Donald Cerrone.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I mean, it's like, hey, I like the way you fight. I don't want to fight guys who boring fighters. I want to fight fighters. I want to fight real guys. So
I think that would have been a great one. I think if my career would have kept going the way it was without, I mean, that was a big hit for me. Like you guys, I don't know if you got it from talking about him, but Shawn was like, he's the reason I got into it. He's the reason I continued to do it. And when he was gone, it was just really wasn't the same for me. But I mean, the last fight I had with him was the Yves Edwards fight. With the last knockout. That was the last fight I had with him before he passed. The one before that was the one before that was Stevens, and the one before that was Joe Lozon. Those were three of my best fights. The Stevens one, not so much, but those other two were the two highest.
Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute, Sam. You, out of your last 4 fights in the UFC, including Yves Edwards, you got 3 fight of the night bonuses. And that Joe Stevens fight was a split decision loss. So you sit here going, wow, it's really not one of my best. Dude, that was a savage fight.
I just beat myself up about that one because when I shouldn't have taken
issues with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And hey, and just because I know you're OCD and this will fucking drive you nuts a bit, I got two fight of the nights and 1 knockout of the night, not 3 fights.
It's okay.
Come on,
either
Mike.
way.
You're on a roll. Get your facts straight.
Yeah. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when he messes up like that.
Sorry about
that. I was actually going to ask you,
that's not CTE. He's just dumb.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Apparently, you weren't. I was going to ask you if we were at one point during one of the UFC conferences or whatever you call that thing. I found myself in a little bit of I had a little bit of the partying going on myself, so I find myself. I don't know how I ended up here. I was in a bowling alley with a lot of the Canadian team, Jonathan Goulet, Patrick Cote. I can't even remember who else. I was going to say, were you one of those people? But apparently you were not.
No, I wasn't at that one.
Because there's a story behind this. So here's what we get done. You know how like the day before it's over, or the last night there, you have a big dinner. And I remember we got done a couple hours early, and they go, "Okay, you guys be back here at 5." So I was like, "All right." And I was with my buddy Matt Mitrione, and so we go hang out, and we're just playing some like roulette or something. I can't remember. We're just sitting there, and you're like, "Let's have a few drinks." You know how that starts with Matt, and then
yeah.
You know, we're big Lebowski fans. So go, "Hey, cocktail lady, give us a couple of White Russians." And I remember she brought him, and he gave her a $20 tip. And this place is dead. He's like, "Hey, keep them coming, hun." She brought us a White Russian about every 8 minutes for an hour. I'm like, at least an hour. So I mean, we show up at this, at the dinner, just a wreck. You know, my manager's getting all these texts like, "You better get a hold of your boy. Something's wrong with him." And then I ended up, at the bowling alley with all the Canadians. I don't remember what happened. I woke up and I'm like, "Where am I?" And they're like calling me, "Chris, your flight's." I couldn't remember what happened, man. So I didn't know if you were one of the Canadians who was there because I can't remember at all.
Trying to figure out.
No, man, I wish I was, man. Matt Mitrione's a fun time to drink with. I've hung out with him. That would have been my, like, dude, Chris, you were one of my favorite fighters.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No, man. I loved it. I kind of aspired because you and I were both those type of guys that went out and wanted to. And if it, like the worst thing, and I feel like you're probably the same way, the worst thing I could hear in a fight was the crowd booing. Like
it killed me.
Was
it
like,
crushed me,
like no. And like I love watching all your fights. I love getting like all the bonuses. I was always, and we were always neck and neck there on the bonus count. So.
I know that was and like I said, I appreciate. Like I said, I understand
that would have been a great story for me if I drank White Russians and bowled with Chris Lytle and we both missed our flights home from the UFC summit. That would have been a good one.
Oh, it would have been a great one, man. It was a rough one though, man. It was not.
Hey,
no,
man.
But,
hey, we're still young, man. We're still young.
Yeah.
We can still do it. We can still do it.
I'll miss a flight with you any day.
So I think just bring it back to like kind of the local scene because I really love the grind. You know, I mean, you talk about UFC. Like we've obviously you've done a ton of interviews with that, but the grind is kind of like where we cut our teeth on. So you've cornered Mark Hominick obviously on more than one occasion, TKO, but Mark Hominick fought in an XFO. No, I think it was an Extreme Challenge at that time, and he fought Tommy Lee, who was
going to bring up the Mike Brown fight.
No, that's probably for part 2. Yes.
Right, so we'll save that for part 2 because that was Yeah. Well, fuck.
So he fights Tommy Lee on an Extreme Challenge. Tommy somehow gets in on a single leg and hoists him over his shoulders, kind of like a fireman's carry, and drops Mark on his head, knocking him completely out. Yeah. It's one of the most frightening knockouts I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, it was like the Rose Namajunas and Andre Dad kind of thing, like that. Yeah, similar kind of thing.
So I think you were in the corner at that fight. Am I correct?
I think I was there for that one. Was that XFO?
It was either the XFO Extreme Challenge, but it was one of Jeff Curran and Monty Cox's events.
Yeah, I think I was. I think Jeff and Shawn were in his corner. I'm not sure if I was in the corner, but I was there for that. And I remember just being like terrified, dude. Like I thought his neck was broken. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. That's, I mean,
what was the ride home like with Mark in the car? Because I mean, he was so much better than that showing. It was just a weird set of circumstances.
That one he ended up being fine after. It was the Mike Brown one. That was the like he was so concussed and so banged up. I remember coming home and it was in Toledo, and he came home. Like we drove straight. Like we were like, let's get him back home to where there's free healthcare, right? So we drive him across the border, and they're like, "Can we see your passports?" And they're like, and we had a Dodge Caravan, so we open the sliding door, and they see Mark, and he's kind of sitting in the back. They're like, and they see him poke his head out to like pass his passport up, and they're like, just go, whatever. So, like, we don't care what, just fuck the passports, go, get home.
That's
fun.
Yeah, I think that was Mike Brown's third or fourth fight. We actually went over that fight with Mike Brown a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh man, that one. And like for me, Hominick, I told you guys, like I started training to be his training partner. So Hominick was like, I kind of was like, damn, Mark Hominick's the best fighter in the world. And then he, and he was blowing through everybody in the Canadian scene. And Mike just had his number that night, man. He just took him down. Mark was weighing in, was fighting at 145 and stepping on the scale soaking wet at 139 back in those days.
You guys always had a knack for that back in the day, though. You guys always did that.
Yeah, but Mark was just not, he was just a small, tiny guy at that time. And Mike was just, Mike was a, old school wrestler, like
cutting down.
Yeah, he knew how to cut.
45.
He's been cutting weight his whole life, right? So he was huge.
And strong.
Yeah, and so strong and just, I was just punishing with ground and pound on that fight. That was not one we like.
Yeah, let me get one more, Mark Hominick. In Tokyo, you cornered Mark at a shoot boxing.
Yeah.
Which was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, Shawn couldn't go for that one. So we went to shoot boxing, and Mark had always wanted to fight there. He was, we were strikers from back in the day, and he fought there, and we had two other guys, a guy named Adam Higson, who's from Hamilton out this way, and then one of our guys on our team that's since passed. But the three of us went out there, and I was the corner man. Shawn taught me how to wrap hands and do all that, and we got Hominick won, and one of our other guys won against two of their top guys. So we were just like on cloud nine. We're in Tokyo. I'd been there once. I fought in K1 once there, and then that's all Yakuza that owns shoot boxing, right? So we were so well taken care of. They had us in this beautiful hotel and stuff. So, but once we got let out on our own after, we were running around the streets of Tokyo, going into Roppongi. And then,
yeah, that's your hangout.
Going to karaoke bars, getting just shit faced. And Hominick and I, at one point, I don't remember how this happened, but we were back at the hotel, hammer drunk. We went in, they had this like beautiful sauna, steam room, cold tub, hot tub kind of area that was just for men down in the hotel.
Jeff Munson knows.
Yeah, Munson, I think, drank some of that water.
We're down there drinking, and he sorry, my wife's just walking by. You all right, babe?
I don't know.
We're still on the fence here.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we're getting drunk down in this sauna steam room area. And then we got these, the hotel kimonos that they give you. They're like instead of bathrobes, you get like a kimono. And then we have these hotel like slippers, and me and Mark decide we want to go for sushi. So we walk out into the streets, and we had already bought in one of the markets, we bought like the George St. Pierre kamikaze headband. So we're wearing kamikaze headbands, hotel kimonos and slippers. And we go start walking the streets of Tokyo, just shit-faced. We're sitting in sushi restaurants. There's guys starting to pick fights with us, and we're like, we were ready, like we're game on. So like, there's like these Japanese guys that are like, we're being pretty rude, I guess. We're being obnoxious tourists.
And where'd you put your cash? That's what I want to know.
What's that?
You don't want to know.
Where'd you put your money?
I don't know. It was tucked in our underwear. I don't remember, man. I don't remember those kind of details. But yeah, we were just like picture that. Me and Mark Hominick and kamikaze headbands running through the streets of Tokyo.
I love it.
2 a.m.
A little funny story. I like to drink alone sometimes. I got lost in Tokyo like at 3 a.m. and I got the same bug as you. I was like, I want to go see karaoke. Asian people, they love that stuff. I walk into this thing, karaoke. It's a huge thing. There's no one there, and they leave me into a booth.
Yeah,
I'm standing there in a booth. Yes. And the bottom line is it's for them to practice. This place is for them to practice their karaoke. They go there, make tapes and stuff. And I walked in like 3 a.m. They had no idea what to do with me.
That is a weird phenomenon there that I don't really get. It's like the karaoke bars aren't like a big karaoke bar where you make a fool out of yourself in front of the whole bar. It's like, yeah, they have these like little soundproof rooms that I don't know. I thought you rented them out with friends and like you get a little small party and you all sing with each other. Like it's strange.
Yeah, that's that comfort bar where you can sit down in a room of 5 or 6 people and hang out and stuff. This was just booze to practice.
Hey, Miguel, what did you sing?
No, I think I paid like $30 for like whatever amount of time to get in, and I just left. So they took my, I don't sing. So
you're not even by yourself in a booth.
You could have
about the shower.
Yeah, no. You don't understand. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. But
you have such an angelic speaking voice. I can't imagine that.
Sam, he's not annoying. Like you couldn't imagine him being one-on-one as annoying at all.
No.
Well, we're going up on 2 hours. Sam's wife is telling you
I think it's 3 hours, brother.
Is it 3?
Yeah.
What time is it?
Yeah, we're coming up on 3 hours.
Sam's very pregnant wife seems very happy.
You can take her to the hospital now. Mike's done. So
hey, we're done. Let her know.
Sam,
thank you.
Hey, it's been great catching up with you, man. I really appreciate your time. We even want more. We can't get enough. So thank you for what
I would love to. It's been I can't believe it's been 3 hours, man. It feels like
now, keep in mind,
I had a great time. And Chris, the amount of respect for you, even if I didn't have a good time, I would come back anyways.
Right. Same to you, my friend. Like I said, there's a few fighters who people ask me who I like to watch. People like you talked about Donald Cerrone, man. I was like, yeah. I mean, Matt Brown, there's those guys I love to watch fight because they bring it every time. And you were definitely one of those guys. And there's no faking it with the fight the night say it all, man. So thank you.
Feelings definitely mutual. And Mike and Miguel, is great getting to chop it up with you guys too, man.
Thank you.
Let's do part 2, your UFC career.
Yeah, really fast. There was a time in the early Zuffa years, like at the big 2005, 2007, where Canada really carried the MMA pay-per-views and behind St. Pierre. The fanaticism of the Canadian people far outmatched the American fans, and it shows you guys. You guys had backing like that and stuff, and it was definitely something that was very impressive. You deserved it. You deserve that kind of love and credit, and that's something that Canada hasn't gotten back to yet.
Canadians love fights, man. Canadians love fights. We don't even really like the sport of hockey. We just like the fights in the midst of the game. So.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Hey, well, let's catch up again soon, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Hey, good luck with that baby. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. I'll think about the name Chris.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.